All right, welcome everyone. Welcome to Hash Church Season 11, Episode 25. We're almost halfway through the year of consistent Hash Churches, which I gotta say, that's pretty awesome. We've been rocking it out. Shout out to all the good folks in the chat room. John Maddox, our number one poster. Shout out to you, good brother. OG Brick 420, Weed Nerd, DWC, DJS, Big John, Camden Fragman. Couldn't forget Bingo Lombardi. I see Carol LEDs has just popped into the chat. Benja710. I could keep going, but you guys get the idea. Welcome, welcome, and welcome to another great episode of Hash Church. Today we're going to start by shouting out our sponsors, as we often do, because they're awesome. So I wanted to start out by shouting out the Press Club, trusted by top hash makers from around the world since 2016. The Press Club is your one-stop shop for award-winning solventless gear, from press bags to wash bags to presses to vessels. You'll find everything you need from wash to press. We're big fans of the Press Club and what they're doing in the community, so we're excited to have them on board as an official sponsor for Hash Church. This is a made in the US, small family-owned business, zero blowout guarantee, patented pink stitch, free expedited shipping on $75 or more, as well as international shipping available. You can visit them at www.thepressclub.co and use the code HashChurch to take 10% off your order. Thanks, Jeffrey, and the whole team over at Press Club. We appreciate you guys. All right. I'd also love to give a huge shout out to Puffco for powering Hash Church. Puffco's game-changing devices like the Sleek Peak Pro, the Versatile Proxy, and the Compact Pivot, all of which I use on an often weekly basis, bring unmatched style and performance, making extracts a vibe for everyone. Their passion for cannabis culture keeps our community blazing strong. Discover the Puffco difference at puffco.com and follow Puffco. Well, I'd be remiss if I didn't mention bubble bags. We do remain the gold standard for water hash extraction, pioneered by the innovators. Hey, that's me, who defined the craft. Built to last, these top quality bags come with a lifetime warranty guaranteeing years of flawless performance with a legacy of excellence. Bubble Bag team delivers unmatched reliability for enthusiasts and pros chasing premium hash results. God, I hate the name premium. Let's get that out of there. Elevate your extraction game at www.bubblebag.com and use the code HashChurch for an exclusive 10% savings. Well, now that I got that out of the way, how the hell are you, Etienne? Welcome. And nice to see you so early.
Hello, sir. I hope you're doing well. All doing good. I was fortunate yesterday. I got to see Caleb. Whoop whoop. Nice 45 there, Colin. Got to see our friend Caleb yesterday and Dominic. We'll be smoking on some of this morning. I got to spend yesterday there. Dominic and Caleb are going around California, gathering stories and talking to people about the historical perspective of cannabis. And they were in Oakland yesterday. And today they're going to be in Santa Cruz for Santa Cruz community meetings, Sunday from 2:30 to 6:30 and Monday from 1 to 5. And that's at the Resource Center for Nonviolence on Ocean Street. So if you want to come talk about growing in cannabis in California historically, come on down and talk to those guys. They are working their way all through California, but they're in Santa Cruz for the next 2 days. So pop over and say hello and say
Cool is
hi.
that?
Caleb?
Yeah, no, I said, how cool is that? I was talking to Caleb this morning. Diana reached out to me from Amsterdam, and she'd been wanting to get in touch with him as she found out a printout, which was an interview with him and Sam. She's been going through all of Sam's stuff, and she's very connected, wants to stay connected, and God bless her heart, I love her for it. We certainly have love for you, Diana. So yeah, I just she wanted his new email. She had an email, but she was missing one letter. So he hooked that up this morning and I passed it over to her. And he's going to try and pop in here in a little bit. So we'll see how that goes. Welcome, Brother Colin.
What's good? Good to
Dude, you
see
tell
y'all.
me, did you get your kid real hard with the ball or what?
Listen, dodgeball with little kids, it's very satisfying.
Yeah, no doubt.
It's dude, it's so funny. Like it's kids love it. It's like, it's amazing. But I'm doing really well. Super stoked to be here. Um, Stoked for the conversation today and see where it goes. But I've got some sour diesel Wilson in my jar in the fridge. I'll go grab in a little bit, which I've been kind
Beautiful.
of digging into. Big shout out to Masonic. That's a very good cross. Absolutely bonkers good. So those out
Hell
there
yeah.
making produces 5% and above. It's very good.
I think we're going to give one of these away today at one point in time from the press club. Have you guys seen their custom bubble hash spoon? It's pretty
No,
fucking
that's cool.
nice, dude. Look at the size
That's a
of this
big
thing.
that's a big spoon
Wow.
tang.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's dope.
Yeah,
Shout
really
out
cool.
to
And they've got it
Press
all
Club.
like press clubbed out too, right? It's all like buttery and nice and just feels good in the hand. And my apologies for being involved in this industry for as long as I have and never releasing a spoon. But that's why you pass the torch. That's why new people show up and they arrive and they say, "Hey, I was inspired by you, but I'm also going to pioneer my own stuff." So. We're definitely going to be giving one of these away later today. Geez, I don't even know. Maybe I'll use this spoon to kind of try and do this. I have these hashes to test today. There's about 8 of them, all bubble
Nice.
hashes, and I'm going to be testing them out of the Valenveras today. Kind of once we get a conversation going, and I'm not like having to like be the main person, maybe Dr. Mark or someone like Caleb could just come in. I could just mention his name and he could just show up and be in the hash church. How cool would that be? Well, life never works like that, does it? Wait, it does work like that. And there he is. Welcome, Caleb, to Hash Church. Etienne was just giving you a
Hey,
nice little shout out. You know that guy.
yeah.
That's
What's up,
awesome.
awesome sauce?
What up,
What's
Caleb?
up, all? What's up, Colin? What's up, Etienne? Great to see you yesterday, Etienne.
Wonderful. Yeah, welcome, welcome, Caleb. He's got your flour that he's ready to go down on, and I've got some hashes I'm going to test here in the next little bit on the Valenveras testing unit. I was kind of waiting for one of those to fall off. Pressed some beautiful hash yesterday. Like, man, I haven't, you know, you see things out in the world, but I pressed some really, really nice bubble hash. I was playing with all sorts of hash. Let me see if I can like open some of these like this bar up that I did. It was Gigi Gorilla
Oh,
Glue.
it's brick time.
Yeah, just
Yes.
just little 100-gram bricks, going through the process. But look just how clean that looks, dude. Like, oh my God. It felt, I will not lie, like pure power in my hand. Like it was incredible. Here you can see before I put it into the press, just I was hand molding it to fit it into my template so that I could get it into this is what it looked like before. So it was oh, these are my little buddies that I was playing with over at his house. The hash was like sort of self-pressed. It was yeah, just really, really nice material. I thought I got some more pictures of it. I know I did, in fact, but I think my photo app still hasn't loaded them all. Otherwise, I would share more of them. They were basically put away as powder and just sealed and then put in a freezer, but they self-pressed. Some of it was absolute goop, like complete and total. I love getting my hands into hash. I love the different textures of hash. When I'm doing things, I was doing a consultation, and people are always like, "Oh, so, once we figure this out with this hash, like we'll just be able to create a template." I'm like, "Man, it doesn't really work like that. Like you'll have a template for this hash, but if you grow it different, if you do something different, like it'll change. It'll change ever so slightly." And I really kind of felt as I was showing my friend yesterday these processes that there are times, and I think this is a testament to getting back to sharing the majority of the information and not being overly protective of the SOPs, although there is part of me that's like, oh, that's my value and that's what I sell to get myself involved. And the fact that gave away so many SOPs over the years is the direct correlation of why there's like hundreds, if not thousands, of hash makers all around the world making hash. And so, you can always look at that from the fear and scarcity perspective, like they took our jobs. Which is probably not the best one to look at it from. Or you can look at it from the sort of love and abundance perspective where you're turning people on, you're moving forward, the whole industry as a whole is moving forward. There's always going to be people that, give you pause or give you reason to question whether I should continue to be so generous. And the answer is yes. Those are tests. Always be generous, always be kind, and always be empathetic. And just understand that sharing and giving away information, because no matter how much information I gave him yesterday, he didn't know the resin the way I knew the resin. There was always this security of like, well, what are we going to do with that? It's like, well, this one in particular, I can see right away, we can't do what we were doing because that's going to not work. And for instance, that GG, that glue that I just showed, the Gorilla Glue, it was as hard as a rock. At room temperature, I could throw that through a pane glass window. I could play with it for a little bit and it would get soft, but I really had to like play with it. Whereas another one that he had, Meat Breath, when I opened that up, it was basically piatellid. It was just like terped out, super, just like gum. I put it in a jack press for 1 second at the lowest pressure, and it pressed it into a perfect bar. Um, that kind of blew my mind. And I explained to him, I said, this is one of those times where had someone been doing exactly what I did, pressing this Gorilla Glue, and then getting next to this Meat Breath and being like, I'm just going to follow the same template. Well, do you remember when you put Play-Doh into one of those things and then you pushed it down and it all like came up like pasta or whatever when you were a kid? Etienne and I are similar ages, so we remember. That's exactly what it would have done. It would have been a nightmare. He would have lost like a lot of hash. It would have just made a nightmare mess. And because I have this intimate relationship with hash, we were able to avoid that. So that kind of gave me a good feeling to, get back to sharing the information as you learn it, and don't be too worried about someone taking that information and doing a better job with it than you. That's how you feed the community. So that's my rant, and I'm sticking to it.
Well said, man. I mean, isn't it like music where you have a set of parameters, you have a set of tools,
Mhm.
and how you choose to use those tools gives you that voice or that individuality in which you can carry on into your work. And then you can find nuance, and that nuance you can share with others, like you're explaining, Marcus. And that's the beauty of all of this, is that it's an exchange. And that's something that most people, the ego gets in the way a lot of the times, right? And you want to hold things back. And I always say this to everybody around me. It's like it's not about the technique. It's about it's how many people you can touch. And if you can touch many people with that, you've done a great job, and you're allowing people to see your work through wellness, and that's unique, and that's not something you should hide from anyone or not share, because like you said, Marcus, like there's probably some guy in the Midwest that like we don't even know about growing some of the best hash and best resin in his garage making hash,
I know it for a
and
fact. I
no,
know it for a fact.
100%. It's the same thing with music. I think about it all the time. There's like a producer somewhere that we don't know about, and he's just unbelievable. He's the next he's the next Jay Dilla, and we don't know it. And
Yeah.
there's it's out there. So
Go
cool
ahead,
It's
Etienne.
perspective.
it,
I love that.
it's about the we, not the me, and that is
Also,
key. Not trying to rhyme there, but I mean, there's a reason why early on in the dispensary world we opened up our doors and gave it away freely,
yeah.
because we knew that if we did not stick together, we were all hanging separately.
Yeah.
So, you know, thinking of the we, that if we didn't bring in people to teach them how to run a dispensary, how it should be laid out, how to do these things freely. I'm not sure we are where we are today. You know what I'm saying? Because there was, Dennis started it, right? He was the OG, and then they got shut down. We were the second generation, and people are like, no, we're not going to settle for status quo. We're going to work for the we as opposed to just the me. And that's where things change, where we step outside of self and we can reflect and make change happen in a way that you conceptualize, but then you ideate. And that is the real trick in life, is taking what's in here and making it out here. And it's easy to keep it in here just for you, but then when you really want to make social movements, this is how it's happened. Because we wouldn't have Bubble Hash, right? If Mila hadn't, done it, and then you took that other step and making the different degrees. So we all have our contributions, but if she hadn't started it from there, where would we be here now, right? And each generation is successfully taken higher and further. And I think that's why we donate our time here, is because we love what we love, but we want to see you here in the future doing it respectfully with love. Something like that.
Yeah, I mean, I hope someone comes back to me and is like, yo, remember that thing you showed me how to do in, X amount of years ago? I mean, I had that moment at a show in MSG. Some kid was like, called me out of nowhere. He's like, Colin, and he showed me this jar and he's like, 5 years ago, we talked about me just doing my first thing. You told me what to get, what to do. Here it is. And then 2 days later, the kid, I think, placed second or third in Masters of Rosin. It was like, that to me is makes it all worth it. Right?
Must have
You know what I
been
mean? It's like,
Skittles.
I don't know what it was, but it wasn't a Skittles. I think it was a papaya. But
Really,
still,
that's unique because Skittles usually takes first, second, and third at the Masters of Rosin. I might have
it,
judged that year, and I'm a big fan of the papaya myself.
it's really good. Yeah, it's yeah. I mean it's yeah. I mean if you haven't had Skittles, it's like having White Thorn Rose. You're just like, oh my gosh, I didn't realize it could exist. You're just it's it's cool. It's like, to me, I guess our era was sour, right? Like when someone hit that, they're like, whoa, I didn't realize that could happen. So I think it's very similar and just far removed, a couple decades. But I think every few years there's something like that comes along. But again, I don't know how you guys feel, but it's not that these things are new. It's just that they're um perhaps shared more often and widely available for everyone to understand. These flavors like papaya was like KC Brains or something. So
Casey
that's
Brains,
he's
yeah.
had that yeah, like he's had
Although
that
I will
cut or
say
that
Poochie's
title
cut is the one.
100%, but it's been locked in those seeds for decades. You know what I mean? It just took someone to search through it to find it, to pull it out and isolate it as humans do, and then share it. So my point is that it's just someone did the work. It's always been there. Just kind of looked under the rug and was like, oh shit, let's share it. So I think that's another part of it is, there's a big world of you know, flavor that we seem to hold back a lot of the times. Back to your point, Marcus, for a long time, a lot of these cuts weren't circulated until someone made an F1 or an outcross, and then they forced their way into the name. So,
And
and
shout out to the people who are willing to share cultivars because, as it likes to sneak in this fear and scarcity, it's been very, very strong in the genetic world. And for a good reason. I guess there's always been a lot of money in seeds. Like from the 90s, there's just been an insane amount of money to be made in the sale of cannabis seeds. And back in the early days, there'd be people that were crushing sales, like Mark, and Mark was willing to sell any seeds. Like if he'd give seeds to people and be like, here, make me more of these. I can't get enough of them from the breeder. So he just didn't care. He was like, bring them on. Whereas the breeders, obviously, well, I call them breeders, but maybe less of them were breeders and more of them were kind of just playing around and doing pollen here and pollen there, which is still, there's value, obviously. Like we can sort of discuss that at length as well, the differences between just kind of playing around and making a bunch of genetics and like stabilizing and creating proper genetic. Those two worlds are so different. And I get little glimpses of them when I talk to Ryan Lee, and he's legitimately upset about like the gene pool of cannabis. And, I think he gets that from Dave, because Dave was also, always wanted to put I mean, just imagine where we'd be if Dave hadn't put those genetics into the world. That stable genetic that was actually properly bred with proper numbers, done the whole proper way. Um, I'm not sure a lot of the companies that exist today would be able to exist. I don't know if cannabis would just cross amazingly without Dave's genetics infused into the gene pool. He kind of created these like incredibly stable genetics and then put them out into the world. When I first went to Amsterdam, other than a haze, I don't think there was a cultivar on a menu that didn't have skunk in it. It was just everything was skunk. Skunk, skunk. And this was in 95. So, mid 90s, a lot of skunk, not roadkill skunk. This was the sweet, fruity skunk. And you could just buy it everywhere. And it was an interesting situation because everyone from North America was looking for roadkill skunk when they'd see that on the menu. But then you'd get this real fruity, kind of like, uplifting, tasty skunk. So it was, yeah, obviously we pay homage all the time to Dave. At the same time, I don't have a deep enough understanding. I see people crossing really nice things. I see Masonic doing all sorts of wonderful work, getting it out into the world. So who's to say what's right and what's wrong? I appreciate the variety and the novelty. Welcome, Dr.
Yeah.
Mark and Craig from Alpenglow, who just popped on in.
Hey, everybody.
Oh, and he's in the garden. How you doing, Dr. Mark? You look like you just like you're ready to like go party with fish, man. I love it. I love
I
it.
just got back. I just got back from Puerto Rico. I was down there for
Dude, you've
10.
got that vibe. You've got a kind of like I was just on an island vibe.
I was.
Yeah, I was infused. Very nice. How was Puerto Rico?
It was great. This was CanMed 2025. The McKernans and Medicinal Genomics holds this kind of medical conference every year, and it's just so great to see, all of the medical applications of cannabis being practiced by real doctors, medical doctors and
Oh yeah.
doctors that, you'd go to see. And so Bonnie Goldstein had a last minute emergency, so she didn't attend, but Dustin Sulak was there, and I'm sure he's well known to our audience as the healer. From up here in Maine, just right up the road here in New England. Dustin is just an amazing guy. He has case histories with patients that have used cannabis that have gotten off of traditional pharmaceuticals, and just a wealth of knowledge. He has a product line called The Healer, so that he was giving out some free gummies. He showed some really interesting data, Marcus, on CBG and what CBG is now doing, and again speaks to those states who've banned, all hemp-derived cannabinoids. CBG is really kind of like the wonder molecule. They're finding it's so useful in so many different things. And another a researcher from the University of Florida, Tallahassee, or I'm sorry, Florida A&M, was showing applications of CBC. So there's another minor cannabinoid that, again, these things are available in the cannabis plant. I think most of the CBC that's out there today is synthetic, but he showed some really, tremendous data against a couple different cancers, including pancreatic cancer. So, this plant just keeps giving, Marcus. There's just new discoveries made every day. And, I don't know if everyone saw this, but it was in the popular press a week or so ago, and it talked about cannabis users having a higher risk of heart disease. And this is being talked about quite a bit. So it was good to have conversations with the doctors about that because when you look at their data that they're presenting, yeah, it's just merely a correlation and not causation. It does not prove that consuming cannabis gives you a higher risk of heart disease. It just says that the population that uses cannabis also just falls into this bucket of higher risk for heart disease. And we don't really understand why. So I think it's really important, again, for doctors to dispel this myth that somehow, the popular press twists this into, oh, if you consume cannabis, you're going to, die of a
But
heart attack.
was the test done in the country that has the highest rate of heart disease on the planet? Because that would probably affect things, no?
Well, yeah, Marcus, there's so many different things that affect your health and particular, risk towards heart disease. A lot of it is lifestyle.
Sure.
Um,
Yeah.
I talked a little bit to some doctors about, again, there's this trend to put everything into a gummy when fact is that gummies is loaded with sugar. It's kind
It
of
can
like
be.
I I think for more medicinal applications, I think doctors prefer things like tinctures um, for oral delivery. If you go back to Chinese medicine, hey, Caleb, right? There's no gummies in Chinese medicine, right? It is all, based on extracts and tinctures and mixtures thereof. Um, uh, Stacy Gruber, who's at Harvard, was talking about some of the work that she was doing, and it's just amazing, like even at a place. So she's associated with McLean Hospital, which is part of the Harvard Medical School, and even in a place like Harvard, you got to think that like Harvard Medical, how many doctors does it put out? And still, even like with Stacy there, very few medical schools teach about the endocannabinoid system. It's like
That's
less
right.
than 8%
Yep.
educate their medical professionals on the existence of the endocannabinoid system and how important it is in regulating human health. And that just has to change. When I would look out in the audience at CanMed and I'd see all these empty seats, I'm like, man, there should be doctors in all of those seats. But those
Totally.
doctors are being paid by pharmaceutical companies to basically prescribe their FDA approved pharmaceuticals. And, most cases, I don't think doctors even think cannabis is even a serious medicine. So I think, conferences like CanMed hopefully get that message across to the medical professionals. And I did meet a couple new doctors who are just getting in,
Mhm.
and need to go to these conferences and need to understand all the applications. So it's good to see kind of like some new doctors coming in, but
Mhm.
ultimately, again, like most doctors, at least, in our modern medicine, would prescribe pharmaceuticals over, cannabis.
Awesome. Etienne
Mark,
had his hand up.
Yeah, I had a question for you, Dr. Mark. So you were talking
Yes.
about the causality specifically, right? That they were putting between the heart because people were asking you specifically. Can you correct me? It basically all they did was they looked at deceased people and they looked if they had THC in their system, and then they were like, "Oh, they had this, so specifically it went there." That was my question to you, and then the other thing was specifically around new training specifically for doctors. And one of the things my group, Veterans Action Council, we just did a series of FOIA requests and uncovered, of course, all kinds of data regarding cannabis, which I need to share with you, Dr. Sheldon.
Yeah, I'd be
Because
very
we did a
interested.
data dump, and it includes all kinds of very interesting dumps, including studies around CUD, because specifically we major veteran VSOs met, and one of the main things that we're going after doctors specifically on is this cannabis use disorder, because cannabis use
Hmm.
disorder does not appear until DSM-5. And one of the things we uncovered was they basically combined out of DSM-4 into DSM-5. And then cannabis use disorder finally appears in 2013. But we're uncovering studies that, CUD concern from 2005 to 2019 studies. Well, it wasn't coined until 2013. So we're finding all kinds of flawed studies specifically that are having issues, but also exposing the misinformation and how they're slamming these data points, specifically as you saw this past week and a half, right, Dr. Sheldon? How many of these articles are popping up specifically, going after specifically cannabis in the heart? And can you
Exactly.
explain that to people, what that causality specifically means? Because it's
Yeah,
one thing, it's a
so
word, it's another thing to understand it scientifically.
yeah, so this study, I think, ATN involved interviewing patients that were already, suffering or had some form of heart disease, and I think they were asked whether they were cannabis users, right? So, so there, what you're doing is you're just connecting a sub-demographic of that population to cannabis use. So that doesn't mean that I guess what you're referring to is when you say causality is to make sure that, you know, what the study actually shows is that, say, consumers of cannabis specifically are doing things to their bodies when they consume cannabis that is resulting in a higher risk towards heart disease. I think like if you think, just again about the lifestyle itself, or just, go back to what the example I just brought up, which was gummy. The last thing, and Marcus, we've talked about this, right? I mean, how toxic is sugar in our diet and
The
processed
most.
foods in our
The
diet?
most.
Oh, okay, now so we're going to put cannabinoids into processed foods. I mean, I'm as guilty as the next guy. I love a good gummy. I make gummies myself, and I know how much sugar goes into that recipe. And people love gummies, right? People, I mean, I guess people are eating gummies anyway. Like they'll get high and then they'll want to eat some sugar, right?
Yeah.
You're not necessarily feeding that Jones. You're just, whatever. I mean, I look at it this way that, any form of cannabis is good. I don't know like if you're talking about like again whether or not they've actually biochemically have identified that say consuming THC leads to this downstream effect, which causes hardening of the arteries, which makes you more highly prone to heart disease. They didn't do that, right? So there's no this causes this, which then causes this, which gives you a higher propensity of that, right? So
Sure.
it's more of like a kind of like looking at the data and looking at patient demographic around cannabis use. The other thing I wanted to just mention about cannabis use disorder that you were talking about, you know, I think peop or on the drug addiction and abuse side, I think what they like to do is they like to, like when they have a patient come into their clinic who is maybe, maybe somebody who's just very prone to addiction, who has an addictive personality. There's a connection between your endocannabinoid system and the what's called the dopaminergic system that's in your brain, and that's the system that releases dopamine. Dopamine is the reward molecule, right? So when you feel happy, like you know, second grader shows you a straight A report card or something like that, and you naturally feel your body is releasing dopamine, right? So when you feel good, you release dopamine. When most, addictions, including nicotine, narcotics like cocaine and other things like that, it's it's definitely connected to that reward system. So when you're addicted to nicotine, your body craves it because your body needs to have that reward constantly, right? And so those connections are known and direct. Taking that to, making you prone to heart disease, like, what kind of downstream effect could there be, and could it be, okay, you smoke cannabis, you get into a certain, state of bliss or whatever, or you're using cannabis. Does that make you more prone to, I don't know, eat an entire bag of potato chips as opposed to just like a smaller portion? Or are you going to order two Big Macs now because you're super fucking high? It's like, So there might be things that underpin the lifestyle that could be related, but not the direct cause biochemically of what's happening in your body. 18, is that kind of like what you were thinking, like what you were going after, like in that
I
question?
just wanted you to explain it for the hash people folks so that they could, sometimes we have to, when it comes to science, we have to not necessarily dumb it down, but explain it in a way that people can get it because the articles say one thing, but then to actually deduce it and talk to a doctor who understands how it's actually displayed is something that the media doesn't teach, or the critical thinking has been lost along the way. So thank you for explaining that in a way that, I hope that the Hash Church audience gets it.
I
Well,
would add to the audience what Dr. Mark said is that gummies don't have to have sugar in them. You don't have to support a shitty business like McDonald's and buy low quality caliber food. You can make conscious decisions to eat consciously. And cannabis can teach you about that. Because if you've gone down this cannabis pathway and you're like learning about organics and living soil and regenerative farming and this sort of conscious way of producing, you think differently. And that can start getting you to think like, well, what does it mean to go to McDonald's? Like, I guess what I'm supporting is mass slaughter of hundreds of billions of cows on an annual basis. That's not, and I'm not against people eating cows. I'm just saying if you eat one, maybe eat one, right? We know that in a McDonald's cheeseburger or a Big Mac, there's about 500 different cows that genetically are in that burger because the vats that they mix these animals in
right.
are beyond massive. So there's ways to consciously, well, just like look at Craig right now, consciously farming in a beautiful outdoor organic farm setting. He could just as easily go grow avid rich avocados in the Salinas Valley. He could do a whole variety of other things to feed his family, but he's making a conscious decision to be like, okay, you know what? Your decisions affect the world, whether you think they don't or not. And your simple decisions can decide, that sort of pathway. And I really learned about this when I kind of went from an all meat diet to a vegetarian diet. And, at a time where I didn't really understand even that a vegetarian diet was a thing. I was just a meat and potatoes guy, grew up eating meat and potatoes, but always felt sick. And when I met my buddy Martin from Manitoba Harvest, he turned me on to this sort of different diet of eating. And I was like, oh, okay. So there's lots of different options. There's lots of different diets. Yesterday I was on a farm. There were emus, there were goats, there were turkeys, there were geese, there were ducks. They had silky chickens. They had all different kinds of chickens. They had, yeah, they just had a really beautiful thing. They had duck eggs and chicken eggs, and they had pigs. So they had, all these different things that they made available. And my buddy was like, these guys have the best chickens on the island. They're free range, they're happy, they're running around this big acreage. He had 5 acres just in the back of his property of just blueberries, and these blueberries had been planted in 1970, and he had never sprayed a chemical anywhere near them. Like it was just you could just feel the healthiness of this farm and all of these personalities just wandering and meandering around. Like, I urge you, go visit a farm, go make a relationship with a farmer, go to a farmer's market because I'll tell you, getting high and eating like organic vegetables and fruit to me is much better than going and getting 2 Big Macs at McDonald's. And the way you
Yeah.
feel afterwards is spectacular.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Marcus, in agricultural based economies, I think it's really important for you to know where your food comes from. And you bring up such a great point because, like an agricultural state like where I live here in Vermont, I know that my local butcher gets all of his meat, both his pork and his beef, from a local farm. And these aren't industrial farms. These are local organic farm. You're going to pay a little bit more in that store. And again, maybe that's where the price pressure is really on the consumers who, can't afford, for that farm to table connection. But certainly that farm to table connection, I think, provides you with healthier food. Again, I'm not being pro vegan or pro, vegetarian. I'm an omnivore. I eat whatever's on my
Yeah,
plate.
healthier food overall. It could be meat, it could be vegetarian, it could be a whole variety of things. It doesn't have to be like some raw, organic, vegan diet. It just has to
Right.
have some level of consciousness to it where we're like, well, here's a perfect example. Stephen Philpott Jr. just popped in. We did the sports medicine episode with Stephen. When the Olympics came to Vancouver, guess who the sponsored restaurant was at the Olympic Village in Whistler, BC in 2010? Do you want to know who the sponsored restaurant was? It was fucking McDonald's.
Yeah.
Who the fuck in their right mind is eating McDonald's before competing for an Olympic gold medal? Like it was just this weird disconnect lie. Like this is just, and then they'd have the athletes like holding the cheeseburger, like I love me some McDonald's, and then because they're all walking around Whistler, they're like, I would never eat that. I would never put that into my body. You couldn't find a lower caliber of food to put into your body. And, as Stephen knows, athletes tend to go down this rabbit hole of consciousness, very similar, same, but different, if you will, than what Craig is doing at his farm, because athletes they start realizing, like, wow, what I put in my body affects everything. It affects my consciousness, it affects my ability to execute, it just makes me not quite as good of a person. Craig's had his hand up for a second, so let's shoot over to him. Go ahead, Craig.
Yeah, I had a little technical difficulty for a minute, but yeah, I just wanted to loop back around. I want to touch on something Dr. Mark said, but yeah, what sparred my comment again was about conscious decisions on what you eat and what you put in your body and how you even purchase your meat. We here in Humboldt County, I don't know if you all know, but we have an amazing winter where we get 100 inches of rain and our grass grows green, and our local farmers literally in our valley here harvest their beef in the spring when the seed heads hit the tall grass, and we get one cow a year that we share with a neighbor, and we just put that in our freezer, and that's about 350 pounds of beef. And like you're saying, Marcus, one cow, one burger, like it's all amazing. And our entire family, even our dogs, appreciate all that. We get the bones and we utilize it all the way through. But back to what Dr. Mark was talking about, maybe you could answer this for me, and that is when you eat a gummy, doesn't it go through your liver versus sublingual digestion bypasses that, and it's a much more rapid effect and goes through a different part of your body and maybe even goes to your brain quicker? Could you highlight that a little bit, Dr. Mark, or
Yeah.
shine
So
some light on?
yeah, Craig, thank you. Love your scenery too. I'd love to be sitting right next to you. So if you keep it in your mouth like a cough drop and you don't actually, some gummies are so delicious you just want to chew it and eat it and press it against the roof of your mouth. But if you keep it in your mouth like a cough drop without ever chewing it and consuming it and letting the solid food go down into your gut, yeah, I think you do get a lot of oral absorption that way. I know that I spoke to Stacy Gruber, again, who's a doctor at Harvard Medical School, who's kind of like pro cannabis doctor there. I asked her specifically about this. I said, well, gummies, is this like, two steps forward, three steps back, especially for like someone who's diabetic? You obviously have other ways of introducing medicine to patients. I think what she said is that she prefers MCT tincture. A tincture, at least classically to a chemist, a tincture isn't just cannabinoid actives dissolved in an MCT oil. That's kind of, we've sort of bastardized that in the cannabis industry. A tincture has typically been what we call a alcoholic extract that then they boil off the alcohol, and then what you're left with is what the alcohol extracted from the plant. In most cases, a tincture was alcohol based, and they leave a little bit of ethanol in there, right? So yeah, you get a little bit of the alcohol effect too as well. And there was always concern, again about, like, say now alcoholics, right? Do you want to be introducing a tincture with medicine where, they're also getting ethanol? Probably not. Ethanol, again, is a toxin in the body. And, but, maybe most importantly, when you use ethanol to extract, you get a lot of stuff beyond what's in the trichome because of ethanol's polarity. Ethanol will start, extracting pigment and sugar and start getting all kinds of stuff from the plant that you may not want, certainly in a vaporizable extract. But if you're trying to get the whole plant goodness, including the pigments, including the fats and the ketones and the waxes, then yeah, an ethanol extract works pretty good. I've known people who've been doing ethanol extract. In fact, I think Dustin Sulak, the healer, uses a cold ethanol extraction. I talked to Dustin quite a bit because Dustin's got a pretty big influence up here in the Northeast, known as the healer. And I think other doctors rely on him and some of his case histories to set dosing limits, especially on medicine intended for children. But yeah, I mean, just to go back to your question, Craig, it's really important if you're taking it medicinally, because if you eat like a gummy, like you really just like you would eat a normal gummy, you may not feel the effects. And you'll want to take another gummy and you'll want to take another one. And then pretty soon, what happens is that that does get digested in the stomach. In the stomach, it then goes into the liver before it gets into the bloodstream. Liver is a highly oxidizing environment where about 50% of the THC will oxidize to 11-hydroxy THC. 11-hydroxy is actually a better binder at CB1 receptor than THC itself. So that's why you get that, delayed onset of activity when you consume an edible and it's not going through the sublingual oral mucosa, which is also very rich with capillaries, and it's in the neighborhood of your brain, right? So you'll actually feel the psychoactive effect. And I met, and this guy is wonderful. Oh, Marcus, we got to get this guy on Hash Church. Harold Hahn from Vertosa. He's called the Happy Chemist. He's kind of like the nanoemulsion chemist that has led to Vertosa being one of the lead suppliers of nanoemulsions for this growing sector of beverages. Marcus, he's a trip, man. He's a funny guy. He's the happy chemist, just like he advertises himself on LinkedIn, full of a lot of great knowledge, and he gave a really great talk on cannabis-based beverages. But where I was going with this, Craig, is that when you nanoemulsify, so if you just, so we all know that cannabinoids aren't water soluble, right? So you can't just put it into a drink. So you have to emulsify those. And when you emulsify those, and now you put that nanoemulsion into a gummy, this is the so-called fast onset effect that you're seeing, and some gummies will advertise for it. I know Mike Hennessy was from Wana was also there, and we talked a little bit about this fast acting effect. So what they're seeing with this fast acting effect is that when you use a nanoemulsion, which just to kind of describe that. So we've talked about this a bunch on Hash Church. So nanoemulsion is like milk, right? Emulsified fat and a continuous layer of water. Well, when you add that into your gummy cook is above the boiling point of water. So you end up removing all that water. And if you think about the nanoemulsion itself, it's defined by the size of the oil droplet with all the emulsifier around it. So that's the nano droplet. And then everything else around that emulsifier is water, right? So you have this continuous phase of water and this emulsified droplet in there. Well, when you boil off the water in the gummy cook, what replaces the water? Because I was thinking to myself, just the physics of it, if you remove the water from the nanoemulsion, you're just going to have coagulated oil particles, right? They're just going to sort of coagulate. But actually, I think what happens here, and this is why I think this fast acting effect works, is when you boil off the water, the continuous phase inside the gummy isn't water like it is in a beverage, it's sugar, right? So what happens, and if you think about it, sugar has a bunch of hydroxyl groups, so it's very hydrophilic, just like water, right? So I think what happens is the nanoparticle loses its water shell, but then gets replaced by sugar. And now you have basically a nano, you know, particle, if you will, made of when I say nanoparticle, it's not like minerals or shit you have to worry about. I mean, they're not nanoparticles like little nanobots or something. It's just an oil droplet that's nano-sized, right? That's all it is. We'll use MCT or sunflower oil, and now that's completely been replaced in this continuous phase of water, which is what it is in the emulsion, with sugar. And I think there's something really to that because even myself, I'm a THC user, but when I take like a 10 or 5 milligram gummy that's fast acting, I can feel it. So there really is something to that fast acting thing. And I think what that also plays to is how rich the oral mucosa is with capillaries that are basically feeding the rest of your blood supply in the neighborhood of your brain. So if those particles are released into those arteries, now it gets in your, you can feel it, right? Makes sense, right? I don't know if that was probably way more than you wanted to know, right?
No, it was
No, no,
perfect. Collins, oh, sorry, go, Craig, you go ahead. And then
yeah,
Collins
no,
got
I
his
was
head
gonna
up.
say
Hand up.
that was fantastic. And one little tidbit I'd leave on the way out here is, I remember when Frenchie was visiting, and we had this similar conversation about gummies and hash, and he literally his one of his protocols was to roll up a Tic Tac size of hash and just pop it in his mouth. And he was like, I don't need the other parts. Like, I got it right here. So I've done that before, like in our trimming room. I'll go up to our trim bag and I'll just come up the side of it and roll up this beautiful blonde Tic Tac and pop it in and do my own little effect process there. But yeah, thanks for all that, Dr. Mark. I really appreciate it. It's like we always talk about gummies, and like you're saying, like a lot of people chew them up and eat them, where it's the better effect is to suck them down and let
Like a
them digest and
lozenge.
dissolve in the mouth.
Yeah, like a
Yeah, like
lozenge
a
or like a
lozenge.
piece.
That's a
Yeah,
great analogy.
yeah,
Hmm.
like a piece of sour candy or something.
Yeah, and
Well,
knowing the difference now, you could probably even go, hey, I'm going to be on a 12-hour flight. I'm going to eat one and lozenge one and have like the timed release.
Yeah, get both effects. Why not, man? If you want to go large, go, go large or go home.
Yes.
Colin, you had your hand up.
Yeah, I was I was trying to riff with Mark on the gummy stuff earlier, but I was tasked with the quest of creating gummies for Pax Labs. I spent 2 years studying it. I went across the country, bought as much as I could, started analyzing it, worked with the chemistry team at Pax, brought in some food scientists. We ended up making a gummy only using fruit juice and purees. And the reason is because of exactly what you just said. It's you come in for wellness and you leave with candy. And I think it's those of you that are out there making gummies, go make purees. Do not at all ever use white sugar. There's no reason to use it. It's just factually not necessary. I mean, you can if you think it's easy for you, but you don't need to at all. And in terms of flavor science, I would argue you can make a better profile not using it. And there's monk
You
fruit,
can.
there's coconut sugars, there's a million ways to get there, and
Organic
I'm
brown rice syrup.
literally living proof of it. And go taste those gummies. They are bangers. They taste insanely good and they deliver on point every single time. They are, from a delivery point of view, like Mark's talking about, they're nano. They have the ability to do wonders for you from a therapeutic point of view. So there are gummies out there that have, people have put the time in, and I've done it, and it's commercially available. And there's companies like Pax that have believed in that. It's very rare, but they believe in wellness. They believe in good ingredient inputs. And that's,
When they're not selling jewels.
yeah. Well, they're not, they think they're done with that. They're fundamentally a very different company now, but I think they learned a lot, I think they've had a lot of self-reflection. They've gotten beat up, I mean, but I just encourage those out there to to look around you and embrace the ingredients that are readily available. And just because you got that white sugar on the shelf doesn't mean you go after it. You know, it's something you can definitely just go buy a watermelon, puree that up. Make yourself some watermelon gummies. Most delicious thing you'll ever do in your life. You know, it really is. It's amazing. So
Yeah, but
feel free,
Colin, I, I
you
want
know?
I want to draw a distinction. So a gummy is a candy. A candy is molten sugar. There's you know you
Sure.
can use different molten sugars, but what really cheeses me off, and I've seen this a lot on the internet, is
Hmm.
where people will just make medicated Jello. Okay,
Hmm.
medicated Jello is not a candy, right? It's just
Yep.
medicated Jello. It's exactly what it
Sure.
is. And if you go to
Hmm.
several websites that tell you, they'll show you pictures of gummy bears and show you, little Harborough little gummies and all this kind of thing.
Sure.
Ultimately, that is a candy, right? Is there really no replacing molten sugar? You have a great point of
Well,
where you derive that sugar could be more uh healthier, I guess, in terms of sugar, but sugar is sucrose, man. That's what it is,
sure.
right? You could get it from honey, you could get it from monk fruit, you could get it from other places, but
Mhm.
ultimately a gummy is candy and not medicated jello. The problem with medicated jello is Jello is actually super interesting, right? It's gelatin. If you know where gelatin comes from, Marcus, comes from the hooves of animals, right? So gelatin is kind of like keratin, which is what your fingernails are made of. It's very, very kind of interesting biopolymer, but ultimately Jello is mostly water, right? And so when you put that stuff in mostly water, the water activity is so damn high that unless you refrigerate Jello, Jello
Mhm.
will go moldy on the counter after only like about 24 hours here in the Northeast. It's because mold
Mhm.
spores are everywhere. Aspergillus eats that stuff like there's no tomorrow. So if you have to refrigerate your gummies, you don't have gummies at all. You have medicated Jello. Period. End of story. There's a lot of recipes up there that just says, "Oh yeah, take your cannabis weed oil, add it to gelatin, add water, and you got a gummy." Bullshit.
Bob's
Yeah,
your
that's
That's
why you got to use
not
uncle.
pectin.
medicated Jello.
You got to
Bob's
use
your
pectin.
uncle.
That's
Yeah, you
why.
can use pectin as well. That's right. I will
Oh
say
yeah, yeah,
that
yeah.
Oh,
I use pectin.
I will
Yeah.
say this. The sugariest, most garbage ingredients that you could possibly make a gummy out of would still be healthier than the food they serve at hospitals worldwide. So just think about that for a second when you've got your medical doctors telling you you can't eat that sugar, but you should get some of our wonderful food down at the cafeteria here at the hospital. It's been known to keep people here for months longer than they need to be here.
sure. As I think of the can, right, of patient number one.
The can. That's awesome. Hey,
But if you
welcome,
But
think about it,
Stephen.
I mean, just in terms of the whole gummy candy thing, I mean, the consumers today love fucking candy, right? I mean,
totally.
there's no question
You're
about it.
supposed to
Sour
eat
Patch
it.
Kids, gummy worms, all those things. Like my kids, my kids' generation, they love it. If it's brightly packaged and has artificial dyes in
Okay,
it
well, I
and
need.
artificial flavors in it, they fucking love it. So, I mean, I think there's a whole swath of the hemp derived part of our industry that just is taking advantage of the fact that kids love that kind of candy and putting hemp derived D9 in there and selling a bag of gummies for like 30 or 40 bucks on the internet. I think the last thing I wanted to say just about this is that, you know, yeah, there's several ways you could ingest cannabis. You could put it into like salad dressing. Oh, I just love like we use a bacon fat. This is probably terrible. A bacon fat infusion, right, into a salad dressing for a spinach salad. So there's spinach in there, Marcus. There's carrots. There's, all kinds of healthy stuff. Yeah, we put feta cheese in there and bacon bits, but ultimately we're getting our salad and we're getting our cannabis all in the same bite.
Ah, meat in the salad, a vegetarian's kryptonite. What's
It's like
this?
olive
What's
oil.
this in the salad? Yesterday I was offered a samosa by a friend. She had meat ones and beef, chicken, and vegetarian. I said, I'll grab a vegetarian one. And as I'm eating it, I said, I'm always so careful with these. It's like you'd be amazed at how often people mix up their samosas. And she's like, oh, my mom's been making them for 60 years. She's 84 years old. She's really good at it. Take a bite, big piece of chicken. First time in about 35 years. I was just like, oh, no worries. It's all good. I probably would have gotten upset about that like 20 years ago, and now it's just like, who
How did it
cares? It's
taste,
not like
Marcus?
someone put a dick in my mouth or something.
How did it
I
taste?
didn't really chew it. I just felt the texture and immediately just kind of pulled it out. I was like, oh, that's like, I don't know what that is. That's different. It's weird when you don't eat that for like 35. I haven't eaten a chicken in or a bird of any kind in over 35 years. It's been a while. I wanted to welcome Steven to the room. I've tried a couple of times, but we were in an intense conversation. How's it going, dude? Long time no see.
Hey, can you guys hear me okay?
Absolutely.
Yeah, no, I was just loving the conversation. I popped in at the right time, apparently. You guys kind of hit all of my topics that I like to talk about. I've just been over here the whole time you guys we're talking, thinking about obesity, and how it's directly related to the endocannabinoid system. So we don't realize how much of our habits are behavioral. But it's the same way you can sit there and just habitually eat gummies. A lot of us, like, we eat for stress response. We kind of eat even if we're just sitting still, and that's very common here in the US. But all that appetite regulation, like, it's based around your endocannabinoid system kind of not signaling hunger signals properly. So it's super interesting that you all were talking about that. But yeah, great to see everybody.
Yeah, you
Hey,
too, man.
Steve, how you doing, buddy?
Absolutely. I did invite my friend Steve Henson. He's a PhD chemist who specializes in nanoemulsification. He's been doing it for probably like 12 to 13 years now. He hasn't replied to me. I also invited my friend Dave from White Rabbit Gummies here in Canada. His company's kind of gone through some changes. Him and his partner went their separate ways, but they had a really good food scientist who was just able to understand the synergistic effects of certain aromatic volatile profiles with certain flavor profiles, whether it's, a maca banana or orange creamsicle or whatever it is. You can't just throw any aromatic profile into any flavor profile. It's just like anything. There's a sweet spot, and when you get it the right way, there's like a wow moment. And that was really kind of what it was like the first time I had his gummies. They're really quite delicious. But yeah, what an interesting thing. Conversation. Right now, everything is gummies. Soon people will be eating nothing but gummies, it seems. Like every mushroom is in a gummy, cannabis is in a gummy. I'm waiting for the 5-MeO DMT gummies. I'm sure they're coming. It's definitely a popular way to get shit into people's gullets. Everyone has a different diet, but everyone will smash gummies. It's like, might as well have a gummy. It's like 15, 30 milligrams, get it going on, start feeling pretty good about it. So
Yeah, I
I
mean,
think
the
I'm gonna, of
vitamins and supplement industry has taken advantage of this, right? You can get a lot of vitamins
course.
these days in gummy format. If you need stool softener, those comes in gummies too. So yeah, I think yeah, you're absolutely right, Marcus. I mean, very, very popular format. Everyone seems to like them. And I think they even now have sugar-free gummies, but you got to ask yourself, man, if there's no sugar, the fuck is it made out of, right?
Go ahead, Stephen.
So, like, to you guys' point that you were making earlier, I always have the argument about the definition of a drug. You put something in your body, there's some type of like chemical, physiological, biological reaction. And I don't think we really think about how much we consume sugar. And like what Dr. Mark was talking about, whenever I think dopamine, I think sugar before I think any other drug. Because I mean, Snickers' whole campaign is you're not yourself when you're hungry. You should go eat a Snicker bar. You know what I mean? So like same thing that we're talking about with these gummies. I think more of those based off health. I think they're like, oh yeah, people will pop a sweet sugary thing in the morning. if you say it's got lion's mane in it, people will just be like, yeah, I don't care where it came from, what the quality is, how it was extracted. It says lion's mane. It tastes like watermelon. I'll eat 3 every morning.
You got to read the fine print where it says extra ingredient, the diabetes. You'll
Yeah, or
get
even
the
like natural flavors, like all these synthetic flavors and dyes. They're like the gummies, it's so good for you, and then you turn it around and you're like, oh man, it's a lot of red 40 in here.
Yeah, it's kind of crazy that that is still in existence, although I think they're kind of finally realizing and kind of getting rid of it. I'm pretty sure we got rid of it a long time ago in Canada, and they definitely got rid of it a long time ago in Europe, but I'm pretty sure you guys still might have it down there, which is so
Oh,
fucked up.
What,
It's
Red
totally
40?
unnecessary.
it's
Red
alive
40?
and well.
Yeah.
Well, if it's not Red 40, they'll replace it with Red 41 or Red
Yeah,
58, or Red 65.
exactly. Fuck.
I mean, they
Oh
have a
my God.
whole, treasure trove of things. But it was interesting. I was talking with a woman down in Puerto Rico when I was down there this week, and she was telling me about there's a pretty big illicit market down there too, and illicit market for psilocybin. And I guess they um, busted. I don't know if it was a store or just some guy who was selling these things. They were chocolate bars, and they were advertised as having psilocybin and lion's mane, and like kind of like nutritional mushrooms and stuff like that. The only thing that they found in there was hemp-derived D9. There's no mushrooms in there at all. It was just completely, mislabeled, and you know, we'll just put a bunch of THC in there, and the consumer won't know the? What the fuck?
Sounds about
Anyway,
right. Sounds about right. I mean, you know what? It speaks volumes to the medicinal components of cannabis because I remember when people were using like naphtha to make Rick Simpson oil, and that naphtha has lead and rust inhibitor in it. That if you distill the naphtha and you remove the rust and lead
yeah,
inhibitor, it is absolutely toxic waste. It looks like mercury. It's like electric blue, and it just fucking moves super psychedelic. And when you extract it, you now have toxic waste and you're
yeah,
responsible for getting rid of it, and it's expensive to get rid of. You can't just throw it in the fucking creek next to your farm. It has an effect on the biosphere. So
um,
yeah, it's pretty insane.
naphtha
Yeah,
is a dog
what I was gonna say about that
breakfast of
is
shit.
people were still killing cancers with that shit. So here you are using a poison to extract cannabinoids to use as a medicine, which for sure you're concentrating into the cannabinoids. It speaks volumes to the medicinal potency and vigor of cannabis that people were still like, putting this naphtha oil on their face and shrinking skin cancer out of existence. And that's pretty incredible.
Yeah, naphtha is just a term for just garbage that the refinery farts out during its processing of petroleum. And yeah, it's a dog's breakfast of shit. Like you say, it's got corrosion inhibitors, has high boilers in there. And then, yeah, Rick's original video, he basically used that shit and then went into his garage and boiled it away in a crock pot. I mean, it's like fucking lighter fluid, man. I mean, just think about the glowing red nichrome wire that was in the heating element of that crock pot. If that touches any of that vapor, you're gonna blow up your garage, man. It's like fucking,
Yeah, it's
you
not
don't
it's
do
not
that.
what you want. It's like a whole
No.
various list of hydrocarbons, like paraffins and cycloparaffins and alkyl benzenes, and just like that's what
Yeah.
naphtha is. It's just this like
It's a
slurry of
great
like
solvent for cannabinoids. But yeah, it's a terrible solvent to do extractions for medical products with.
yeah. It's an interesting world we live in with cannabis being recreational and medical. It's very unique in the sense that there's nothing else really like it where you just have like gas station D8 available in vape pens over here, and then you have like, GW Pharmaceutical pumping out Epidiolex all across the UK. Steven's got his hand up. Go ahead.
I was gonna say my argument, just because anytime you go in a policy meeting, if you say recreational or medical, it kind of puts you on like one side of this argument.
Mm,
I've learned that the wellness conversation is kind of like cutting through the middle of that, because most people who are like regularly consuming, there's some of them that are consuming medically, but the word recreational has like this bad connotation to it now, from certain people's viewpoint. I realize most people are consuming this like for wellness, whether it's anti-anxiety or something like that. That fits in the same class as like the other supplements that you can buy at a wellness store. There's stuff in like any of the supplement shops in the U.S. that will kill you if you consume too much of them, whether it's synthetic pre-workout or whether it's natural plants that you can get in a supplement store. So in my mind, cannabis fits right in the middle of this. It doesn't fit like medicine because I live in a state where there's no medical access. There's also no recreational access. So to me, I'm like, this fits as a wellness supplement. It fits more there than it does in either one of the, like, alcohol is, I feel like, recreational. Medicine, I feel like you either need a medical license or go to a doctor. Most of us are actually doing wellness, in my opinion, just from my background.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it for sure. There's definitely the medical recreational thing, and the hemp thing. Like what we had to do with cannabis to get it to be allowed was we had to separate it into components, and we had to say, well, hemp is a distant cousin of marijuana. And that's how we got hemp grown in the ground. And then we're like, well, this is medical marijuana, not recreational marijuana. They're very, very different. It's like, yeah, the medical products are way more fucking expensive, less accessible. And so there's definitely a bit of a disconnect in this industry because of all of these divisions. It would be nice to I like the idea of just calling it wellness. That leads back to all cannabis use is medicinal. It's wellness. You're just, bettering yourself. And generally if you're trying to do wellness, you're probably not trying to consume, 600 grams of white sugar on a daily basis. The number of what the average, like, American, North American, whatever our continent here, consumes on an annual basis of sugar is shocking. If you Google it, you won't even believe it. It's really, really shocking. It's in everything. It's in your ketchup, it's in all your condiments, it's in your bread, it's just literally in everything. So you got to be conscious and be aware of it, and go support the people like Craig who are willing to, just create. It's such a nice little business, the farm stand. Go support some people. They're flipping eggs, they're flipping whatever it is they're flipping. You can go meet them. Generally, they'll invite you in and you can tour their farm, which is very like, hey, like let me kind of, proverbial see under the skirt and see what's going on here. What are the practices? How happy do the animals look? Go ahead, Craig.
Yeah, to that point, we just had a yoga retreat group, a traveling yoga retreat come from Florida. And, we did what we usually do. They come for the cannabis. We sneak in the cultivation practices and how we're healing the earth and how we're growing all these other things in the same ecosystem. And we had so many aha moments where their eyes lit up. And, we've done quite a few tours over the years. And this was a really special one because when you think of yogis and practicing people practicing yoga, they're really about health, wellness, and mindfulness, for the most part. So when you're explaining, some of these interactions between plant and humans and the earth and how it's all one symbiotic relationship, you have these minds that are ready to accept that information, and it was just really, really amazing. And we definitely made some lifelong friends in a 2-hour tour, and the folks, our friends that put on the tour, were so excited because their group went back to Florida and said, we can't wait to plan the next one, and we're going to have even more focus, because they did everything while they were here. They did definitely a yoga session every day, but then they went rafting and ocean and tide pooling and all these other things. But the cannabis farm is definitely going to be more of a highlight for them in the future. So yeah, as people learn what we're doing on farms like ours, whether you're growing cannabis or if any of you guys follow the No-Till Growers, Farmer Jesse, YouTube, and that whole group, it's just amazing how this information is spreading around the world on so many different levels. And it gives me hope to know that we've made a change. Like my children were some of the first ever in their classroom, that my teachers said, or their teachers said, that my children grew roots on their plants. Right, that was a new one. Like kids always grow the tree and they do the leaves and the branches, but no children never grew roots. And mine were the first to do that. So we're making a change, we're making a difference, and it feels really good.
That's awesome, man. Good on you. Stephen mentioned in chat the one thing to avoid while you're going down the wellness path is the wellness leeches or parasites. Like anyone, any situation, there's always just going to be people that kind of like look at it as like a mark, almost a con, where it's just like, oh, I could con these people out. The snake oil salesman, if you will. It's always been, I think, really, it's the foundation of the pharmaceutical industry, the wellness industry that kind of went through that capitalistic pathway. Go ahead, Stephen, you have your hand up.
No, I was just gonna say, when I was in Illinois and we first went recreationally legal, people who don't know, 3 of the largest MSOs in the world are all headquartered in downtown Chicago. So something that was super interesting is these companies that nobody had ever heard of before just showed up in a new state. The West Coast tried to warn us. We didn't listen. These big companies showed up and they would have these big, oh, we're going to do yoga. Yeah, somebody knows exactly who I'm talking about. But they would have these big, oh, if you have a corporate job and you're stressed out, come to these yoga events. And you'd find out that these companies were pushing some crappy, sugary products and kind of like trying to take over the wellness community when there's already local organizations that have actually been doing this kind of like more underground, not as, comfortable speaking publicly about it. But now you have these beverages showing up. And to me, beverages seem to be the thing that's taken over. I don't really know for better or for worse, but I live in a state with no medical, no recreational, but there's cannabis beverages everywhere. And they consider that wellness, and it's going crazy. And that's why I'm just like, I think wellness is a nice middle ground, but you always have to be aware of like leeches who, whatever you build, the leeches will come. That's kind of my like be all of that conversation.
Stephen, in that market, would you say that there's a fair mix of like low calorie options like seltzers and like fruit waters as well as the sugary soda? So some like Coca-Cola, I think has 39 grams of sugar in a 12. I mean, I mean, for those hash makers in the audience, you know what 39 a pile of 39 grams looks like on the scale, right? So when you take a Coca-Cola and 39 gram, I mean, that's so much more than like I put 2 teaspoons of sugar in my coffee in the morning. I think this is like 20 teaspoons of sugar. I mean, it's like it's an insane amount of sugar they put into those sodas. So my question again is like, are there a lot of low calorie options like seltzers and things that basically could be viewed as maybe more or less unhealthy than those sugared up sodas?
So I'll tell you, I think Texas and North Carolina are the 2 biggest states with this issue right now. Somebody just said it. And the reason is marketing it as an alcohol alternative. If you see, even the top beer companies are now like, they've been anti-seltzer, but now they realize seltzers are what people are drinking. That I would say it's 90% to 10%. You almost don't see any sugary beverages,
Oh,
juices,
really?
teas. You can't really find those, but the seltzers are interesting because breweries are huge in the South. And the local breweries all have a THC option at the very bottom, and it's usually named something weird. I have no clue what connections they're using, but I've been to concert halls, sporting events, like public sporting events, where there's a THC seltzer, and I'm like, how in the hell does a state with no recreational and no medical have THC seltzer everywhere? And it's because
Right.
all they're saying is that it's an alcohol alternative. That's it.
Yeah,
And
so the way that they're averting risk, legal risk there, Stephen, is the fact that in those, so if you have a 12-ounce beverage and it's a 10 milligram drink, if you do the math on that, what you'll find is that it's 0.0028 weight percent. So it's two orders of magnitude below that legal definition of hemp. We talked a little bit about this at CanMed, that 0.3%, threshold for industrial hemp or marijuana or whatever was never meant to be extrapolated onto formulated products. So it was always meant just for solely for plant material to distinguish it in the field from cannabis. I mean, we're aligned on this. To me, it's all one plant. It's all one plant. This arbitrary line at 0.3% is just the legal definition of what they removed from the Controlled Dangerous Substance Act. But I think that's why it's such a good play for big beverage. Big beverages, they've already made the investment in the canning lines. They have the distribution networks. Like when you see these displays at Total Wine in Minnesota, I mean, it's just amazing to me. Colors and brands and just everything. But you know what? You're giving me some good news, because what you're telling me is that, did I hear this right from you, Stephen? 90% of what I see at Total Wine is seltzers and not sugared sodas. Is that right?
Yeah, yeah, it's
Wow.
almost all seltzers. I mean, to me, I thought it was more of a price thing than I didn't think they were doing it for health reasons. I just felt like carbonated water is, I mean, I got a thing in my house that can put carbon in water, and we call it sparkling water. So to me, that's why I'm just like, I don't necessarily know. I'm sure these are out of state products that are coming in state. I doubt that they're being produced
Right.
here.
Well, that's
Yeah.
one of the reasons why this is such an easy play for big beverage, right? Because they've already got, again, the canning lines already paid for. This has been capital that they've already spent. To them, Harold's nano emulsion is just another ingredient. It's kind of like a flavor. And they're like, oh, we could open up this sector by putting 10 milligrams of THC in there. And that most of that THC is chemically derived from the conversion of CBD, because again, CBD is cratered to below 350 a kilo. So that means they could still be below $1 a gram per their active ingredient costs. It's a no-brainer, right? It's a no-brainer. And the other thing that I like to say, I mean, I love beverages. I mean, I was really kind of skeptical about them at first. I mean, I didn't think that a heavy THC user like myself, it would move my THC needle at all. But I'm telling you, man, halfway through a 10 milligram seltzer, Steven, I could feel it. I really do feel it. I think it has something to do with the nano emulsion.
Yeah.
And, I just think it's going to be a super popular category. I'm all about increasing access to patients. And I love the fact that, like, if you go to a liquor store, like if you're stocking up for a party and you want to buy beer and you want to buy some hard spirits and some alcohol and shit, now I can buy THC drinks, right, underneath the same roof and
Right.
provide my party guests with, an alcohol-free option. And I like that it's seltzers. That's really good news, because I had assumed when I looked at all those bright cans, I'm like, oh man, they're just sugaring up the population again here.
Some of them are though, man. I'll tell you, like I've been studying it for a minute, and I just had a meeting with a distribution or a guy who's heavily involved in distribution, and the thing is, Mark, is like you can distribute these things from states that don't even allow it in their C stores, right? And that's the other thing. Like in Massachusetts, there's a guy that takes over the whole East Coast, right? And he's not even allowed to sell it in Mass, but he's got a warehouse full of these things.
Right.
And I've tasted like, dude, I have hundreds and thousands of cans in my possession in my garage of just other brands. And there's a lot of junk, man. There's like maybe I can count on my hand the ones that are like really like thoughtful and really smart with the ingredient list and how they're incorporating it. And then on top of that, what's the function? Is it reishi? Is it chaga? Is it L-theanine? Like what's the active, in terms of these other, plant medicines. And there's again on that side, there's a lot of junk, right? Because there's not a lot of great ways to put, say, let's a mushroom extract into a drink yet still. there's still a lot of learnings there from an extraction point of view. Most of this stuff, as you said earlier in the conversation, is mainly done into alcohols and then burned off. And that's really hard to formulate with, man. You can't make a great product that has, byproduct constituents in parts per million. It adversely affects the profile. So what I'm getting at is there's a huge like open playing field of opportunity for those that of yourselves out there in the world that are interested in formulating healthy products. Like there's just not a tremendous amount. There's not a lot of them, man. Like I can literally count 5 or 6 on my hand that I know across the country and world that I've tried that I believe check the box as like truly organic or they're sustainably sourced, and then is using mother liquor and not using some weird, chemically diverged version of THC. And then on top of that has like a good branding and good name behind it. So it's really interesting from what I've seen. I think there's just a lot of sugar still. You know what I mean? Even though there is a lot of seltzers. So I just wanted to long way to the sugar thing, but it's just like there's so much there, you know what I mean, to talk about.
Yeah,
It's really
mother
getting deep.
liquor tends to be super bitter because it's you're concentrating all the extracts. But then
Yeah,
again, Colin, in a 12-ounce drink, if you're only using 10 milligrams of active, do the
totally.
math on how much, it's not a lot of material. The other thing is that people, so like 4 or 5 years ago, well, let's just say to make a cannabis-based emulsion that was stable, that maintained its potency in the can, was still something that people needed to figure out. They needed to figure out how to do that with an emulsion that basically had little to no flavor at all. You could emulsify using things like polysorbates, which are synthetic emulsifiers and surfactants, but then the aftertaste is super bitter. So there was this company, I think they were in Connecticut. They came up out of nowhere with this stuff called Bitter Block, which again was just
Ooh,
sugaring over
yep.
your bitter
Bitter
notes
block.
of your
No good. Yep.
emulsifier, just really bad. But I think in the last couple years, the three big suppliers that are out there today in the market, there's Vertosa, and there's Azuka, and there's a company called Source, spelled SOARSE or something like that. So those are
Mhm.
basically the ingredient suppliers that are providing the things to the licensed folks who are making these things. The interesting thing about Stevens Market up in Minnesota is that again, the level of the THC in there falls way below that of the legally defined version of hemp. So I think a lot of that stuff comes from other states, can legally, I guess, or quasi legally go over state lines and end up in these liquor distribution networks.
Yep.
It's a really powerful thing. Again, if you think about it like this, Colin, you could have a building, a factory, right? And at the front end of that factory, you're bringing in CBD to the building, right? Then you do a chemical conversion of CBD so that that high THC input never leaves the building. And then while it's in the building, you nano emulsify it, right? You put it into your bright tank, you fill your cans. Now, what went into the building was legal CBD. What's going out of the building is a product category that, again, is below that 0.3 percentage. So everything that happens within that building takes the big bad THC molecule, right, and formulates it at a level that's way, way dilute. So, I mean, again, I think that's a low risk or lower risk opportunity for big beverage who's already put the footprint in to make the canning line that could make so many X thousand cans every hour, right? And really, how do you compete with that? If you're like a license holder and trying to introduce a beverage, you almost certainly need to partner with someone who's already made that investment into that canning line, right? So that means you have to partner with some other beverage kind of person. So
Yeah,
anyway,
there's a company called Monarch that makes a great emulsion. I'd also recommend those out there to check out. Mark, I can get them to send you some. Um, I've been talking to them. They want to deploy some stuff into New York. Um, but yeah, there's a lot of options, and then there's some pharmaceutical companies out there that make compounds that are far outside of our industry that I've come across that are actually even better than all these guys that have been making emulsions for specifically our industry. So there's a lot of things we've yet to discover, I think, as I've kind of uncovered, and it feels pretty interesting. But it gives me pause with the HD9. I'm not gonna lie. The HD9 definitely gives me pause.
Stephen has his hand up. Go ahead, Stephen.
Oh, all I was gonna say is, the one thing that I've seen from all of this, especially having worked like for MSO and kind of seeing how they were just focused on mass production. I met the CEO of the company whose dispensary I was managing, and he was like, "Oh man, you're not going to be here long." And I was like, "Why?" And he was like, "Bro, this is retail. Like when you go to Target, you don't ask the person like, 'Hey, which lotion has less, parabens and synthetic ingredients?' Like the person at Target's like, 'I use that one. I don't know about the quality of every product that we have.'" And that was the CEO of a massive company telling me that that wasn't the focus of the company. However, I do think that this is where like true craft comes in. And I'm not even talking about craft cannabis. If you look at what we're talking about, we've talked about burgers today and we've talked about beer. Mass produced beer and mass produced burgers have been king. No competition. They've been dominating until the last like 10, 15 years. You could take a shitty beer that you brewed, call it an IPA, charge double and say it's local, right? So there is this now conceptualization where people are interested in like, is this burger grass fed? You know what I mean? Like, what's the difference between a grass fed burger and one that you stuff full of corn? I think people are interested in that. So now, as you see mass produced products come out, people will learn what shitty quality is. And that's when the opportunity of craft people to say, "Hey, do you know what full spectrum means? Do you understand that maybe you got something synthetic put inside of a seltzer?" Versus me, the first time I had a solventless gummy, I remember just standing there. I didn't even want to chew it. I just like let it sit in my mouth, and I was like, what are these other gummies that we've been eating in? Like, this is hot dog water, you know what I mean? Compared to like some locally brewed good shit. So in my opinion, I think that the same way craft beer and craft burgers are now having like a significant impact against like McDonald's and Burger King, I think that like people are going to learn as these mass produced THC seltzers come out. They're then going to start having questions like, I heard that this isn't as good for me. Maybe it doesn't have as organic ingredients. Let me learn about the process. Because most people see THC and they only really think about the molecule. They're not thinking about the process of a plant producing it. They're not thinking about possible synthetic conversions from CBD. They just hear THC and they're almost thinking about it like an alcohol percentage. That's why education is such a big deal. Because this is when you can educate on all the other things that go in and grow in a craft product versus a beer company who jumped in the game and said, "Hey, now we produce it too." So that's my like whole, as this mass production increases, I do think people are having more questions about like what craft means and how to learn like how to meet craft growers that still exist.
Yeah, well said, Stephen. Well said for sure. I'm just playing with my Valenveras unit right now. So I've been analyzing and testing hashes while we're here on the. I have about 10 to test. The first one I tested came back at 62.9%, this little bubble hash right here. So definitely shining like diamonds. I was expecting it to be over 60%, but yeah, enjoying the conversation and just doing a little testing while I listen. Lovely.
Nice.
Yeah.
What do you guys smoke?
Marcus, I need to get me one of those little meters.
Yeah, I want to hook you up with these guys.
Yeah, absolutely. I'd be interested. I met a guy down at CanMed this time around named Jeff Rawson. I don't know if any of our listeners know about Jeff Rawson. You know him, Steve? What an interesting dude that guy is. Oh my God. Not only an extremely colorful personality, but he dresses the part too. He wears like psychedelic like pants and tie-dye shit and all kinds. Well, he's using one of those orange boxes, which I guess is a small little kind of like micro chromatograph
Orange
kind of thing.
photon, I believe. Yeah.
Orange
Yeah.
Photonics. I used that for my master's thesis.
Yeah. It
Yeah.
has a solution though, correct? Yeah,
It
yeah.
does,
Yeah.
yeah. I
Yeah.
used to
I
use
think
it a
so.
lot.
Yeah.
No
Yeah.
solutions for this thing. It's nice and easy. It's the thing I like about this is I could literally get like my 10-year-old son to run these samples for me if I needed to. It kind of takes out that I guess the complexity of even just something as simple as using a solution, but they definitely work.
Yeah,
It's
so
an
if I had
interesting
access to any
technology.
one of those devices, either that one, Marcus, or the photonics, what I would do is I would set up a study on my HPLC and I would get I try to do a correlation, right? And see
Hmm.
like how well that works at low concentrations. And then I would actually intentionally make, dilute solutions to see if there's kind of like a limit of detection limit. Like
Yeah.
can that discern? So if you were using that, for example, to do like a field test, like in a law enforcement kind of situation where it's like, ooh, is this stuff marijuana or is this stuff hemp? Can you tell the difference between something at point 0.2 and 0.28 and point 0.3 and 0.31, right at that legal boundary of what defines hemp and marijuana, at least in the United States? I mean, how accurate is it at that level? Is it super accurate?
I found it to be pretty accurate. I mean, for accuracy wise, obviously the only way I can really test its accuracy is by validating COAs that already exist. So a lot of the stuff in Canada, what I notice in
Right.
Canada, I feel like this thing's very accurate in regards to active moisture, or active water, moisture content, cannabinoid content. The macro and micronutrients is a mind blower. The terpenes always seem to come in low. And I was talking to a gentleman from Holland who has an EU GMP lab, and he also uses one of these units. And he validated it. He's validating his nutrients with it. He's breeding with it. He's doing all these different things. And he told me about a week ago that he prefers it over his GMP lab. The time, the energy, the person that he has to have present to operate the equipment. This thing he could just hammer out hundreds and hundreds. So terpenes seem to be coming in low when it's cannabis, like 1.5%. Every company in Canada has between like 2.5 and 4% terpenes in their flower, which I just don't believe. I think it's a lab increase. I think the labs are padding the numbers for terpenes. And yeah, you see it all the time. You see, I mean, shit, I've got some bubble right here that says it's 9% terpenes, and it has like barely any smell at all. Like it's just not loud. It's just not. I mean, this is the one that is saying 9% terpenes. It's just like it's mediocre at best. It's not very
Yeah.
good rosin. So
I saw that in the test result I just had come back, and it was actually lower. And I knew there was like I knew there was 10, at least 10% in there, and it came back at 8. And it was just really interesting because
How did
I'd
you
love
know
to
there
see
was
that
10% in there?
because I put 10% in there by volume.
Oh, okay.
I think Dr. Marco, when we used Orange Photonics, we
I
actually
wait.
did it compared to desktop HPLC. So we got to
Hmm.
compare the portable lab versus a desktop HPLC. And I
Hmm.
mean, not only was it spot on, it had less deviation, like from test to test. Um,
Okay, and are you able to discern different potencies of different cannabinoids at that same level, or are you just talking about potency of THC level?
no. But it's
no,
it's it's we do cannabinoids, CBG, CBD. There's a whole variety of them. It's all just about putting in the models. So he's working with a bunch of labs right now, these guys. I definitely want to link them up with you. We're going to have them come on and do a show where we talk about this unit. And I'm sure they could probably get you a unit for a month or something to get you being able to do a little test or
Yeah, I mean,
something.
I
They're
would do
all
like an
about it.
academic study, Marcus, that we would just publish the results, and if anything,
Yeah.
publicize the use of their instruments. So they'd probably really like that. But I
Yep.
guess what would be really useful, again, for the testing labs, especially if like you're going out, you think about it, like how intense is it to have like a testing lab where you have samples coming in all the time. You're basically just trying to turn that crank as fast as you could turn it, because the profitability of a testing lab is nowhere near like a producer. Producers, those businesses, if you run the business correctly, could easily be a 10 to 50 to $100 million business. With testing labs, you're lucky if that business reaches, I mean, they reach profitability, but the fact is that their operational costs to maintain those instruments and to be able to grow with their market size severely um, impacts their ability to be profitable. And so, um, one of the reasons why testing labs are just in that mode of like when you look at HPLC, for example, you could run like a 5 minute method where everything comes out in 5 minutes, or you could run a 15-minute method. Well, guess what? You could run three 5 minute methods in the time that it takes you to run a 15-minute method. I see you agreeing with me, Stephen. So you know the situation. So these testing labs are in this high throughput mode because the more samples they process, the quicker they can get to profitability and pay everybody, the investors, their employees, and all that. So it's kind of like, they can't really go back and do the research and say, hey, are our methods correct? They're just, again, trying to keep their ISO certification. In these days, the labs down here in the States have to be DEA registered, so have to be registered with the DEA. There's all kinds of paperwork to get your GMP and GLP certifications. So these testing labs and the phenomena we've talked about here on Hash Church before, lab shopping, right? When you go into a market where there's hundreds of testing labs, well, maybe not hundreds, but maybe dozens of testing labs, right? You'll send out your samples to a number of those labs, and some labs you might fail. I'm not saying you particularly, but a grower might fail for microbials. But in other labs, they don't fail for microbial. So like, wow, let's go with that COA because that shows our stuff to be clean, even though we know our
Exactly.
stuff's not really clean. And what you also see, so I'm pointing to the presentation that Yasha Khan from MC Labs made at CanMed, and he shows there's a clear correlation
Liking.
between labs they're inflating THC numbers and um, passing samples that have failed in other labs for mold, but don't fail in these other labs. So it's kind of like there are labs that are basically cooking the books to basically make sure that they remain profitable in a state where there's, say, like dozens of labs. And some labs, what's come out to be is that the labs that are honest, that are honestly reporting THC levels and reporting that stuff are failing, those labs are going out of business because they're not getting the business from the growers, from the labs that are passing and inflating THC numbers. It's crazy.
Yeah,
It's
that's
the truth,
bad.
man.
And it's
Yeah.
also part of a market where, here in Canada, really quite basically, if you have something under 20% THC, it's probably not going to be accepted into the market anywhere. And so this is
Yeah.
a this is part of why the numbers, at least here in Canada, are, somewhat corrupted. I can't say that they all are, and I don't want to call out any labs in particular, but it's nice to have an accurate tool where I can test and, THC wise, I'm like within like if someone says this is 40%, I'll get like between 38.5 and 39.5 will come out on the machine. It's very accurate when I'm testing against cannabinoids. It seems less accurate when I'm testing for terpenes. And now this unit, of course, only allows me to um, do terpenes with cannabis. For extracts, it just does cannabinoid content, mainly THC. But what a fun
I
little
think
unit.
I
Yeah,
think
it's a shame.
one of
Go
the
ahead,
issues is that people don't understand what type of machines are doing what type of test. So like
Right.
what the states require for you to use is not the same as what Dr. Mark is saying. Like an academic study, most of these labs, if you look at the variation, like you couldn't publish a study saying who has the most accurate test because there's so much of a deviation. If you send the same sample to 10 different labs, there should be a very small deviation between those, and it should be negligible. What you're seeing is a significant difference from lab to lab. So, to Dr. Mark's point, you can run the same test a different way and get a different result. There's also HPLC and GCMS. One is better for terps, one is better for cannabinoids. Who's going to pay for both of those tests? Not most people. They only pay for one. So, like, these are things that we don't necessarily understand. When I ran the dispensary in Chicago, I woke up one morning and they had added an addendum to recreational, and anything over 35% THC had an additional 20% sales tax. So there was stuff overnight that went from like $30 an eighth, which is, still crazy, but it went to like 50 something dollars because that additional sale tax was based on 35% THC.
Did
So
you say
then
$30 an eight was crazy?
at the time, yeah.
You're not from California, are you?
No, well, that's the thing. Every state is a totally different market. Like there's no
Dude,
there's no national market.
I was walked through Chris, who has Student Glass, and he has a dispensary in LA. I was walked through his dispensary yesterday. My friend walked by. I said, "Oh, what's that in the cupboard there?" "Oh, this is the Wizard Trees." I'm like, "Oh, the Wizard Trees. I heard about that. Real nice packaging. $75 for an eighth."
Yeah, and that's why the state of Illinois added a 20% sales tax and then started making the THC percentage the thing that people shop for. Because then you just get into a bidding war of, hey, you have the strongest THC percentage, that's how you get on the shelf. Well, then the state is on the other side saying the higher the THC, the more we're going to tax you. So then the cost is going.
How funny is it going to be when cannabis comes out with all these flavors, but super low THC, so people can smoke more and enjoy it more and have all the flavor profiles, and then we realize that that's how the most amount of cannabis will be sold with very, very low. I mean, I could only imagine how many CBD cigarettes Shanti Baba sells in Switzerland in the grocery stores. People love to smoke. They love flavors. I talk to people all the time. They're like, man, if it was lower THC, I'd be able to smoke way more. But I smoke like half a joint, and I'm like, there's an actual relationship with the rolling of the joint and the smoking or vaporizing or whatever it is that people quite enjoy. And I suspect, that not everyone is Skunkman Sam who can just smash like 75 dabs of ridiculousness. How cool would it be to have dabs that to turn people onto that don't destroy you? Go ahead, Etienne.
Oh, I was just wanted to follow up on the tax thing because unfortunately this week in California, our taxes we were hoping to stay at 15%, but apparently that failed somewhere along the way, and we're about to be at 19%. So I got the notification yesterday from the CDFEA saying prepare your business for a up to 19% tax now. So unfortunately, Californians, our hard work failed, and yeah, we're about to catch up to you, Steve.
Damn. Gavin Newsom, eh? Go ahead, Colin. You got your hand up there.
Well, I was going to talk about the lab shopping thing, and if you send, I mean, we've done it. We've sent 5 samples to 5 different labs, and we got 5 different results. And I think that's, a case in point to your point, Steve. It's like it's unfortunate, but there is no standard and there's no governing body that checks up upon anyone, literally state by state, let alone across the United States. So there's no consistency when that happens, so you're totally right. And instrumentation's like instruments. Like some people like a Fender, some people want the Epiphone, and they just provide different tonality, right? And that's just the truth of it. So it's been a fascinating learning curve for us because we just see a lot, and it's like it's tough to trust one lab over another, most of the time. But we need consistency because I don't have time to think about much else other than what I'm doing. We're not a big, well-oiled machine. We need to focus on what we do in the lab and in the grow and the things that make us kind of who we are. So it's hard. But we found a good partner. We feel like Green Analytics is a good company. They have a bunch of states that they're in, and really think that they've done well. So, but yeah, I think you brought up a really awesome point, is like that instrumentation is like such a difference, it really. And then are they plating for aspergillus, right? Like that's one thing most labs don't even know how to do. So they're just failing you. They're just saying, "Oh, you failed." And you're like, "Well, did you plate it?" Like, no, why would we need to do that? It's like, well, do you want to see if it actually like grows?
Just for shits and giggles, Craig's got his hand up. I'd love to hear from him. Oh, you're muted.
There we go. It takes me a minute with my phone. And I had a bee. I don't know if you guys saw me get super startled. I had a bee just chilling out on my toe, and I'm highly allergic. So it looked like I got shocked by electricity. I didn't get stung, but I was like freaked out for a minute. But
Man.
I don't want to shift the conversation, but I also want to highlight Caleb for a minute. And I don't know if anyone has acknowledged this yet, but Caleb just graduated with what, your master's in something cannabis, something maybe. Like, could you give us a little, like, we need more of you. Like, you are out there, you were doing it, you're tasting, you're experiencing cannabis with the palate you're developing and the education you have, and that's amazing.
Thank you, Craig. Yeah, it was a master's in public sociology, and because there are some masters in cannabis out around the world, but unfortunately, even Humboldt doesn't have one yet. All they have is that bachelor's in cannabis studies. And so I was lucky enough in the 2 years I was there to get to work with some of those undergraduate students, like 17 and 18-year-olds that just come up to Humboldt from different parts of the state and even from out of the state, specifically because they wanted to learn more about cannabis culture. And obviously they were already cannabis culture initiates. And like, that's the part that I really like didn't anticipate when I went to school, like to work with Dominic. And like, that's the part that's really been the most fulfilling, is seeing that there are still the younger generation that still cares about the culture versus the industry. And like some of those students were at your farm, right? And like that type of thing being able to happen is like the best part of it to me.
Yeah, and one of the lecturers, Dan Marr, who's an amazing human, him and Jesse Dodd started like the regenerative certification, and they held down at the Emerald Cup the regenerative awards. And now Dan is, has a lecturer's position, and he's the one that initiated the tour here. And Dan even had a side hustle of helping us do this whole grant of getting all our buildings connected with rain catchment to our pond and all this other amazing, ecosystem build out for an infrastructure build out to be more regenerative. And then, yeah, like you're saying, like the demographic of kids to me, like my daughters, like their age, they were from all over, and some of them have never, like, again, it was, we're going to this farm to see cannabis, but then we snuck in our practices again, and it was really amazing. And we had one moment I'll share, like, where we always start our tours out here, and we're out by that picnic table, and we're just having a moment talking about like terroir and appellation and where our proximity is on the mountain, and an eagle just drifted by like at eye level, and everyone just went quiet, and I just said, "And there's an eagle," and they were just all like, "Oh." So
That's awesome.
it's just this amazing experience. You can see how much I enjoy connecting with people and doing these tours. And we don't do formal tours. Like, I shouldn't say formal. We're not open for a weekly tour. It's like someone reaches out and they want to do some sort of private tour. We figure out just some sort of basic setup, and we make it happen, like a coffee and tea service with a cannabis tour. And it's fun, and good, amazing conversations come from it. Longtime friends down the road.
There's something to be said for seeing an eagle at like eye level fly by. I live in the mountains. We see them all the time. Very rarely do I see one fly, like almost never, in fact. One time I had a penthouse apartment in downtown Vancouver on the 26th and 27th floor, and I was standing in front of the window with a buddy who had just come over to look out at the view of Stanley Park. And an eagle flew by the 26th floor of this apartment, and it was probably 5 or 6 feet outside of the glass. I could see the eye of the eagle. Like I had never experienced an eagle experience like that. And I'm a bit of a weirdo when it comes to birds. First time I went to Jamaica in the 90s, I just sat under a tree and looked at the parakeets for hours and hours and hours. I've always just been really excited about big birds, eagles, gold eagles, bald eagles, ospreys, like any type of immaculate, massive bird in the sky has always just got me giddy and excited. And it kind of reconnects to the fact that my buddy Martin again to kind of talk about when I became vegetarian. I'll never forget being super high on mushrooms with this guy back in the day, and we were talking about animals, and he's like, "Yeah, animals are amazing. I was in Costa Rica, and I was this, and that," and he's talking about all these experiences, and I talking about my experiences, and after about an hour, he's like, "You really love animals, don't you?" And I was like, "I really do, man." I was so, like just high on mushrooms, super vulnerable, super just open. And he goes, "Then why do you eat them?" And fuck, if that stuck with me, man, I could not escape it. I couldn't, it wasn't like some weird, like, "Oh, I'm a vegan and you should be a vegan." He just hit me with this psychology that I was just like, he's like, "Why would you support such a system? Like, I don't understand. Like, you love animals, but yet you support the torture and mass destruction of them." And I was just like, "Fuck, you're right, dude. I eat tons of fast food. I eat like low quality meats from fucking low quality stores. Like, I'm just a Winnipegger, Like, I didn't grow up with cash or like quality experiencing quality food like that." And that stuck with me so hard that was really the inspiration for me to become a vegetarian, because I just felt like it was this weird. I mean, of course, I have hypocrisy. We all do. I could find hypocrisy in each and every one of you. There's no doubt about it. But when I experienced my own hypocrisy on that level and was unable to put it back in the box and hide it and just be like, "Oh, I'll just go back to ignorance," or whatever. Like, ignorance is so lovely, right? Like, never attribute to malice what you can attribute to ignorance. Well, okay, yeah, that's true, but it doesn't mean you can't learn and better yourself. And keep in mind, I'm talking about my own personal experience. I'm not judging anyone for anything they're doing. I'm talking about my hypocrisy that I was experiencing. And I think it's unique for all of us to go through those experiences in our life, not to necessarily be like, to be mentored, to be told something by someone that you look up to, that you're going to hear. It's not about like critiquing people and judging people. I'm sure there's that side of it if you're insecure or maybe a bit of a narcissist, but there's a level of being mentored by people you see who are moving in the world in a way that you would like to move. You see it and you think, "I want to move through the world. I want to be like that." That's inspirational. I want my kids to see me moving like that and doing like that. And so that's kind of that was why I became a vegetarian, being asked why I eat animals on a fucking, like, by the way, me and Martin used to eat like 5 grams of dried mushrooms and sit in a dark room. We went to the school of Terence McKenna back in the day, which is let me tell you, that's an intense way to do psychedelics. It's quite the opposite of going to a String Cheese Incident concert and gobbling half a gram and smoking some hash with your buddies. Great experience, but that's not the experience I'm talking about. Go eat 5 grams of mushrooms and come face to face with your hypocrisy and see where it leads you. Anyway, that's
Marcus,
my rant.
String Cheese is playing at Canny Fest. You got to
Dude,
come to Humboldt County.
dude, I'm telling you, when is that? Is that in August or September?
It's Labor Day weekend, so it's like first, 2nd of September, or it's the last 2 days of August, something like that.
Dude,
Caleb
that's
might know
possible.
the
That's
exact dates.
possible. I'm telling you, I could have my. I have not hung
Do
out with
it.
this. I haven't hung out with the String Cheese Incident or all those people in so many years that would be pretty fun. I ended up backstage at my first String Cheese Incident concert back, God, it must have been the 90s. They were obviously not a huge popular band by any means, but really nice guy. I think the guitarist, what's his last name? Like Hershey? Dave Her, does that sound familiar? I think he was a big hash smoker.
Nurshi.
Uh,
Nurshi.
Nershi. Yeah, that guy. His wife hit me up and was like, "Hey, I heard you have hash. I heard you're like the hash man, and my husband loves hash. It's all he smokes." I'm like, he sounds like my people. Let's go meet. But a great experience, wonderful band, super fun group of individuals, the audience, the people I made, the friends that I made at those shows, I still talk to today. So really, really love those guys. I'll try my best to do that, Craig. That would be pretty awesome. Go down to the US and see the incidence of string and cheese. So I've just
Well,
been doing these
cheese
tests.
is dairy derived, isn't it, Marcus?
Cheese is dairy derived, yes, but I'm not a vegan, Dr. Mark.
So
But you can be
Marcus,
if you want.
help us understand like when you're an omnivore like and you're super hungry, it seems like you kind of crave like animal derived protein like I know just for myself. I mean, I'm a meat eater. I love like when I like maybe have fasted for, I don't know, most of the day, and then you sit down at dinner and there's a big pork chop there or a New York strip steak. It feels like you're satisfying your hunger. So as a vegetarian, like when you have that moment of hunger, like what is it for you in your diet that gives you that real, true, full feeling of, I'm satisfied? I know certain people for it's legumes, other people it's they eat a lot of tofu and soy, but what is it for you?
I mean, I'm a big fan of food. I'm lucky my wife makes delicious vegetarian and vegan food. So she does all these wonderful potato leek soups and,
Mhm.
broccoli leek. She does, shepherd's pie done vegetarian. We do all sorts of chilies. Obviously, I love Italian food, big fan of pasta, big fan of pizza and lasagna and all of those things done vegetarian. Love, ethnic cuisine. I mean, these people have been making vegetarian food since the beginning of time. So Indian food, Vietnamese food, Thai food, just so many one. I mean, I live in I live in, the Dragon's Tail. So we have an enormous amount of Asian people, every variety with all of their cuisines right here in Vancouver, and they are awesome, like really amazing ramen spots and just, so for me, I'm not a huge giant. I do eat some fish. So,
You
like
eat fish, yeah.
recently
Seafood, so shellfish
not
and
all of
stuff
it,
like that.
not all of it. And it's not like I have any, particular, I don't do oysters and I don't really do like clams and stuff like that, but I'll do some fish, salmon and halibut, sable fish. We have a really beautiful restaurant close by called the Salmon House on the Hill that I brought my partners who were in from Colorado recently. And
When you consume fish, which is animal protein, do you have a
yeah.
different feeling of being satisfied and full that
No,
if you
no, you
just
have to keep in mind the animals got their protein from the stuff I'm eating. So they just are producing their protein from the same thing I'm eating. You can just get my son, who's a perfect person to ask this question to. He's 6'5" and 250 pounds, and he's a vegetarian. And so when he was like 160 pounds and had to gain 90 pounds, he did it all vegetarian. He eats an enormous and he has an incredibly healthy diet, much healthier than even my diet. He weighs all his food, he understands his caloric intake to the drop. He knows how much energy he needs to exude if he's going to reduce weight and cut, or if he needs to pack that weight on. He needs to obviously do it, consume more calories and he's expanding an enormous amount of energy. We have a gym just across the street here, and the weights go up to about 375 pounds total. And the other, about 6 months ago, he was like, "Oh, I got to buy some more plates." And I was like, "Well, for what?" He's like, "Well, I've maxed out the weights." I'm like, "It's 375 pounds." He's like, "Yeah, I'm maxing it out." I was like, "Okay, that's psychotic." Like I'm lifting like 120 pounds. And my son's just, actively emasculating me. So no, I get the same kind of feeling when you sit down to eat the steak. And the same way I was, here's the thing. Once I became conscious of like, oh, I don't want to support this system that slaughters animals and tortures them and whatnot, which isn't to say that there's free range and there's a whole system that you can support and still eat meat. So whenever I talk about the system that I don't want to support, it's like the lowest, worst caliber of system in the meat world, the Purina dog chow and like the hot dog industry and like all of that stuff, right? Like everyone, even people that eat meat can all agree that that's bunk at the on the highest order. And so yeah, I feel pretty good when I eat a nice, bowl of fruit or maybe my wife made me a breakfast. I'll have like some hash browns. I'll eat eggs, so that definitely is producing,
Well, remember that we remember that lyric from My Sweet One, right? The Fish song My Sweet One.
yeah.
Herbivores ate more because their food did never run.
Did never run. Yeah, the herbivores ate more because their food did never run. Exactly. But
Marcus,
then,
in
go
your
ahead.
restaurant shout out, we got to shout out East is East. Didn't we all go there a few years back in Vancouver? That place was amazing. Or BC, yeah, Vancouver. We went.
In Vancouver, which one was it? East was East.
East is East or something like that, or East is West, or West is East.
I'm trying to remember what that is because there's one that I'm thinking you're thinking of,
Yeah,
but I can't remember the name of it, but it's close to that. It was like it was open till 4 a.m. They had all vegetarian, like the miso fries. Like, why
it was
can I not
amazing.
remember the name of it? Man, next time you come up to Vancouver, please.
Oh yeah,
Hit me
I
up.
cannot
The,
wait.
the other thing I was going to say is, when I learned to not have, like, when I learned to be a little bit more conscious about meat, then I went down the super deep rabbit hole of trying to be more conscious with food. And that became even more difficult because if you're going to be like, oh, I don't want to eat meat because it's being tortured, well, then it's like, well, I don't want to eat like seed oils and all the different variations of corn extracts, and I don't want to consume all of these dyes. And it's a daily experience, your diet. You have to make these decisions every day. And luckily, cannabis, funny enough, keeps me away from the temptation of bad food, whereas most people will eat and then they just want to smash like terrible food. If I get high and I start getting the munchies, I'll just go eat something like delicious, like half a watermelon or something that's just like where I feel good after and I feel good about myself. I'm not like, oh, I'm such a piece of shit. Like I just ate like a tub of Nutella with a spoon. Like, why did I do that? I don't do that. So then I don't feel like a piece of shit. I feel like a piece of shit about different things that I do, but I'm working on those things. So one at a time, one at a time. Anyway, good conversation, guys. Appreciate the food and the diet. We talk about cannabis so much in regards to cannabis as a medicine. But my goodness, if you're using cannabis as a medicine, but actively poisoning yourself with your diet, like if you're just like the easiest thing to do, in my opinion, to have a good diet is like stop drinking pop. Just don't like cold turkey, don't drink pop. That shit is so poison. Steven's had his hand up for a while, actually. Yeah, go ahead, Steven.
No, please, like this is my jam. Before I got into the what we call now cannabis industry, I was a strength conditioning coach. So hearing you talk about your son counting his macros, what you originally said about your consumption of mushrooms and how it kind of had some effect on your perception, I very strongly believe that the consumption of mind altering substances, it makes you question your conscious consumption. It makes you think about everything you put in your body. It makes you think about how much you eat, how many times you eat. It makes you question where that came from. It didn't come from the grocery store. It came from somewhere before the grocery store. It makes you like trace this whole parallel from why are you putting this food inside of your body? To your point, actually, right after the first time I ever did LSD, I went vegan for a year. Can't tell you why, but my stomach had a different desire of what it wanted. I didn't want to eat the same stuff that I had been eating before. And that made me question that whole unconscious eating. Like I was a strength coach. I thought that you needed steak. I thought that you needed whey protein. I thought that there was a difference in a lot of these things. And it was like, no, it's really your palate. It's what you're telling yourself. There's a joke of this, bodybuilder online. He says, "Man, you ain't eating for it to taste good. You're eating to stay alive. Stop eating for stuff to taste good." And to Marcus's point, if I ever find myself with the munchies, I make an orange juice, lemon, turmeric, black pepper shot so that whatever flavor or sugar or crap I was looking for, I just try to like brainwash myself out of it as a reaction. If I know I have the munchies and it's gonna send me down a bad path, that's your chance to grab the trail mix. That's your chance
Yeah.
to like consciously overthrow your own habitual just eating bad stuff. And I feel like only cannabis and shrooms really like give you that type of perspective.
I would add to that that if you're kind of craving sugary foods, especially at night, there's a high likeliness that you have parasites because they wake up at night, they sleep in the day, and they love sugar. They absolutely love sugar. And most of us have parasites on some level or another. It's not a scary thing, but it's definitely like a good thing if you're looking into practicing wellness. Like, look into parasite cleanses, look into, and they're not easy to get rid of. There's a whole, there's a book by Hulda Clark. Many people call her a quack, but she has a book called Cure for All Diseases and Cure for All Cancers, and she gets really deep into the fluke worm and the cycle of parasites. And when you kill these worms, they kind of they hold on for a little bit, a little bit, a little bit, and then just at the end, they just disperse this like explosion of eggs and viruses and just shit to weaken and beat you down so that you can get sick, so that one of those eggs can form and grow into another worm. And in Hulda's book, she kind of connects and correlates that these fluke worms cannot live in your organs until they have a certain level of saturation of solvent. And then she gets into why there's solvents in all the shampoos and all the everything you touch has a bloody solvent in it. And what does isopropanol do when you drop it on your hand? Does it puddle and sit in your hand? No, it doesn't. It like absorbs right into your skin and goes into your bloodstream. So just an interesting, something to look at if you want to go down that rabbit hole. But a parasite cleanse is a big one, and yeah, you want to starve them. You don't want to feed them.
But to Marcus's exact point, you have more bacterial DNA than you have human DNA. You have to realize that. You're like, "Oh, I'm a human." Everything that's in your gut is actually having an effect on your behavior and your habits. So if you know at nighttime, what Marcus just said, "Hey, at nighttime I get this craving for bad foods," you have to realize like you as a larger organism have smaller organisms inside of you that naturally live there, but they influence what you desire. And if you keep giving them that sugar, they grow more stronger, they colonize your intestines, and now your mind and gut connection that we keep hearing about that's like still kind of new science, that's exactly what Marcus just described. If you've never been able to understand the mind and gut connection, that's exactly what that is. And I think more of us need to understand when you get that hangry, hunger, any of those cravings, you have to like consciously put a fucking stake in the ground and make like a conscious decision to not feed these little like organisms that live inside of you essentially.
Yeah.
And if you starve them, you will find long-term benefits. Almost everybody does.
You got to think of it like cordyceps, that fungus that takes over the insect's mind and controls its body. There are things that live inside of us that do the very same thing, and parasites in particular will have you craving all of the wrong things.
And Dr. Mark, isn't all of this related to your endocannabinoid system?
Well, yeah, I mean, in indirectly, I mean, the endocannabinoid system is the body's own pharmaceutical company. It's the regulatory mechanism or regulatory system that's in place to basically regulate all other systems. Your nervous system, your circulatory system, um, just about everything in your body. Um, I wanted to just change gears just for a second because I was reminded about this Canadian group. Marcus came and gave a talk at TechCon, and it was super, super interesting because what they did was they developed I'll read the title of his talk was Cannabis Effect Research Driven by EEG Technology and Machine Learning. And what it was the presenter is a fellow by the name of Israel Gasparin, who is an engineer from Toronto, and he's at a company called Zentrela. I'll spell that Zentrela. And what it was a brainwave EKG sensor that they would put on a patient or somebody who just used cannabis. And so EEG is basically electroencephalogram. So basically, what you're doing is you're measuring brain waves. And he looked at a bunch of different brainwave patterns of people who just recently used cannabis. And it was really super, super interesting, right? Because you can certainly see this correlation between the onset of getting high, you know, he measured it, he used a term called PEL, which I think is just some type of measure of psychoactivity. And what you could see is that, yeah, this psychoactivity curve would go up moments after consumption. And so he looked at a variety of different patients. It was super cool. His presentation is just very inspiring on like comparing like cannabis that tested for 23% and cannabis that tested for like 15%. And what he found is that the cannabis that tested for 15%, guess what? They had a bigger PEL curve than the stuff that tested for 23%. So I think that's a very, profound scientific example of it's not all about THC content, right? But I think that the interesting aspect, psychological, well, maybe sociologically is I think is the right term, is that can you use this brainwave device to assess impairment, either behind the wheel of a car or in the workplace? Certainly, like if you're operating big machinery or if you're going into brain surgery, you shouldn't be high, right? You shouldn't be under the influence of cannabis. And certainly, like what we know is that there's the downfall of the fact that cannabinoids stay in our system while not being psychoactive. It's difficult to correlate blood level activity of cannabinoid metabolites to impairment. But what I saw very clearly here is that this machine, or I wouldn't say it's a machine, it's basically a cap that you wear. So it's just like a EEG kind of thing that captures your brainwave, coupled with AI and machine learning, because they could look at patterns in different patients and look at different, did the person consume a tincture, a gummy? Did they smoke? What's the effect of this psychoactivity that they're measuring in brainwaves? I think something like this could actually be used to look at driver impairment. Now, I know it's like a big controversial subject in our industry, like, oh yeah, if I smoke weed today, I'll still have metabolites in my body tomorrow. It won't impair my driving at all. But if someone were to, if I were to, in a court of law, to basically produce, blood test results, they'll say, oh, it's above some certain nanogram per liter level, which means that you, regardless of what you say, your body was intoxicated because you had a certain amount of THC. So we kind of know that that's bunk until they really do a statistically valid study to correlate blood THC metabolite content to driver impairment, which they haven't done. Until they do that, like the similar way they've done with alcohol, they can't really take just, someone's blood and basically correlate impairment. But I believe that this kind of device could be used in the field, right? Because basically what they do is they're measuring your brain activity. And like it or not, I guess when you are stoned, you have delayed response time, which could affect how quick your feet press the brakes. If like kid with a bicycle comes out in front of your car, I mean, you're somewhat more distracted when you're high. Maybe you're listening to your music and you're not realizing everything else. But I'm like one of those people who I'm convinced, just because I've driven high so many times over my lifetime, that I'm actually a better driver when I'm stoned than when I'm straight, because maybe I don't know, focusing on the road a little bit more, or maybe having a little just more, okay, I'm high, I better, pay attention to the speedometer, know how fast I'm going. know about all the turns and everything like that. But I just found that that was a super, super interesting use of AI in cannabis that could potentially, you know, solve this issue of is someone when they're behind the wheel or in a workplace operating dangerous equipment, under the influence.
I would only add to that, and I've said this many times, is that one of the unique things about cannabis is when you get too stoned, you don't want to operate heavy machinery or drive a car. The opposite of alcohol, which you convince yourself that you're totally safe and then you go wipe out an entire family on the I-5. It's different than when you're too stoned. And I've told this story before of getting this girl super high at my house and she left and I left about an hour later and got in my car and I drove up to the stop sign at the end of my block and I'm behind a car and I'm honking and it's car's not moving. I get out and I go over to the car and I'm like, what the fuck is your, and I realize it's her. And she's sitting there and she's like, I'm too stoned to drive. And I said, oh, well, let's just park your car and you can come back in the house. We can hang out with the fish tank. And, and I was young when that happened, but I realized like, what drunk person would have done that? Like, there isn't a drunk person that exists on the planet that would do that. We've
Right.
got Stephen, Etienne, and Colin all with their hands up. We're going to do it in that order. Go ahead, Stephen.
Yeah, Dr. Mark. So I actually love what you're saying. That's actually one of the things that I want to incorporate into my PhD. However, I also counter it with that brain activity in a specific region doesn't always one-to-one translate to what
Right.
somebody's actually doing. So while different phases of the hertz or the frequency of different brain waves
Mhm.
will show you kind of like, is this person more alert? Is this person more relaxed? That's really all you're getting. You're not really. So my counter to that is in my field, we have something called optimal levels of arousal. And every single person has a different level of arousal. So
Right.
where one person may have like crazy anxiety when they're sober, and then they consume something and now they feel more calm, in order to do these type of studies, every person is essentially their own control. So you can't compare one
Right.
person to any other person. It's like metabolism. So
Right.
that's the only thing. Like you can compare somebody when they're completely sober to when they consume, but technically every single individual on this planet has a different gene expression in their cannabinoid receptors, metabolism, and all of that. So it's really different to correlate EEG one-to-one to somebody's status. That's that, and I'm saying that from the
100%.
IRBs. Yeah, the IRBs are like, hey, can you say that this is a one-to-one? And it's like, not
100%.
really.
Stephen, I think that this guy Israel who gave the talk, I think he's one of the principals at the company, like that founded that company. But I think he's recognized that, and I think that again, one of the questions from the audience did address kind of like exactly what you're addressing, and even in terms of like a variety of different hair configurations, like hair, I
Darker
guess,
hair color that's curlier, it doesn't work as well on.
right, that's right. And so what somebody who was very perceptive in the audience noticed is that when Israel showed the pictures of the subjects that were undergoing this measurement, they all had very short hair. They were all men, and they all had very short hair. But I think the point that you're bringing up is exactly why he's using AI and trying to build AI databases with patients from different demographic. I'm saying exactly what you said, Stephen, is exactly the reason why this application, in order for it to really be robust, has to use some type of AI or machine learning because exactly the point that you're bringing up, which is that not there's not one single human being who's going to react the same way. And so he's trying to do as big as his IRB will let him do studies, and these are just, yeah, longitudinal studies where he'll take like a given product and they'll take like 5 puffs from a vape pen and that'll be standard across his entire control group. So everyone's taking 5 puffs. And now he looks at the brainwave of each one of those patients and says, okay, and maybe it's the machine learning and the AI that helps him kind of normalize that data into something that could be a little more general. I totally agree with what you're saying. And I think that this is, again, part of the just beginning of how you're going to use AI in cannabis to really, in this case, assess impairment. Again, I'm not thinking that it's as much of a problem with cannabis as it is with alcohol and other, prescriptions, like do they have this for OxyContin, right? When you bang a couple oxys and you're behind the wheel, I think I'd rather have my driver be a little stoned than somebody who's on opiates. But I totally agree with what you're saying, Stephen. And I think the powers to be, and Israel, I had a one-on-one conversation with him, really bright guy and very amenable. In fact, Mark, we could probably get him on Hash Church. I think he'd love to come on and talk about his technology and where it's going.
Absolutely.
I don't think
I
it's
was gonna
all
ask
negative.
you. I was gonna
Yeah.
ask you to, that you probably met a ton of great people at the conference, and you already mentioned a few of them. If Caleb even put one of their emails into the chat.
Yeah,
So
Harold.
yes, of course, Harold. Yeah, let's do it. Invite him
Harold
on,
Hahn.
man. Like we can set up shows all the time. I've talked to Caleb
Yeah.
again recently. He has another idea for a show. We're always looking for ideas for shows. I have 7 days every week to come up with an entire idea for the show. And as many of you can see, I really didn't have an idea this week. I was super busy. I was consulting. I was off out of my house and away. And so I only put the link up for Hash Church like last night at like 10 o'clock at night or something. So, no, anytime you have any kind of ideas, we have pushed the Aromatic Volatile show to June 29th. This is exciting. I think we're going to have a pretty good show with the Abstract guys and with Marsha Lagour and Nick Ziegler and all these other folks. It should be a good one. But in the meantime, if anyone has any ideas or any folks that they want to invite, that's kind of I love meeting with all of you guys weekly, but it's also nice to infuse different energies. And, that's why I love having Caleb and Stephen on the show. Just some new, different energies that are, kind of up and coming and just like nailing this new information. I love what Stephen's doing with the sports medicine and that whole concept of cannabis. And I love the work that Caleb's doing as well. So let's find as many folks as we can, whether they're 70-year-old people that have been rocking their industry for 40 or 50 years, or whether they're like 25-year-old people and they just kind of graduated and are on their way to do great things. I think that Hash Church is an incredible platform for all. We're very inclusive here. Unless you don't smoke dabs, then you can't come on the show. Sorry. We gotta fucking draw the line somewhere. Oh my goodness. I think it's time for a dab. Everyone ready for a little dab?
Just about ready. Hey, I have my hand up.
Oh,
So,
please,
yeah, I got
you're
my
next.
little puff coat.
Right.
So, our veterans group has been doing FOIA requests, Freedom of Information Act, which is something we do in America, which we can basically write our government and say, I want your data on this. And they go and they find your data and they bring it to you. So it's really kind of fucking cool. Of course, it does cost money, and you have to pay for it depending on how much you're doing and what you're asking. And we've been asking a lot of questions specifically about cannabis, and specifically about cannabis regarding cannabis use disorder. So we kind of did a little deep dive on cannabis use disorder. And of course, cannabis use disorder first appeared in 2013 with DSM-5, which is the classification for doctors, for lay folk, to understand if somebody is addicted to something, etc. It's the official guidelines that they put up. So what we have found is the terminology cannabis use disorder. Well, we've known that this terminology, cannabis use disorder, has become a kind of be-all catch-all. And in the Veterans Health Administration, if you basically discuss cannabis, which you have the right under Directive 1315 from our friend Michael Krawitz, who helped change that law back in 2010, it's modified every 5 years. And this is specifically regarding the most recent updates. But what we have seen through our most recent FOIA dump is that they're putting cannabis use disorder with anybody who just says they're using cannabis. So it's kind of become a catch-all. And what recently I've had major meetings with all the cannabis VSOs, which are veteran service organizations that are in the cannabis community. And one of the things that we agree on is that there is cannabis use disorder has become a bullshit catch-all, which needs separation. And separation has been done in the research. Nurse Nick Pichet has done research. She's trying to separate medical cannabis from cannabis use disorder, because there are people using medically cannabis, but there is no actual DSM or medical standard at this time. It all falls into, it was previously cannabis abuse and cannabis, I forget the other. There were two terminologies in DSM-4 they combined into the cannabis use disorder in 5. So, um, we need to get this separation specifically because we need science to help us, and we need researchers who are watching to do that research to help, because science is also, I mean, doctors or nurses get lazy, so they're going to fall on whatever terminology is in the book, right? Because that's what they go to. It's the book. And there is no terminology for that. So, we're working on that, and I would love to talk to and bring Nurse Neek onto the show at some time when she's dealing with some health issues. But once she's ready to talk about that, because it's a very important issue that, veterans are a snapshot of the whole of reality and of the rest of the medical system here in America. So we're trying to have that positive influence so that you don't, when you go to your doctor, just get that cannabis use disorder just because you talk to your doctor and said you use cannabis, right? What does that do? Well, you can't lose your benefits. However, doctors can necessarily hold back your pain meds if you have a serious pain situation and you need that pain medication for that. People are getting their medicine withheld, honestly, because they're like, oh, well, you're using cannabis, so you have this use disorder, which is considered bad. And honestly, one of the other things we found was hallucinogen use disorder is the new terminology that is being coined in the medical. So if you come in and say you use or microdose hallucinogens, now you can be diagnosed with hallucinogen use disorder too now. So science is a double-edged sword. It gives us information, but at the same time, we're missing vast parts of information. So that's kind of a plea of understand, and we're still unraveling. And the latest FOIA dump, I'm going through 2,500 pages of research that's nutty and fun, but and we'll uncover more stuff. But it's very interesting stuff.
Awesome. Thanks for sharing, brother. You had your hand up, Colin. You wanted to do some sharing, I think. Indeed, he does.
Yep, that's it. That's it. Colin, you're muted.
You're very muted, sir.
You're totally muted.
Sorry, man. So I got an opportunity to work with Zentrella when I was developing products for PAX Labs, and the PhD side of PAX was really amazing team of people. So they were really adept to doing stuff like this. So they took the products and they did a study, and it was, the research framework is 28 people, I believe. And you saw the results of it. I think, like Steve put it, I think there's a lot more to be desired here, but I think it's a neat snapshot of what's possible, as Mark highlighted. But it's a cool idea. I think it's just interesting. So, and the AI based technology, it's, at the time, in 2023, this was done. It was really new, you know. So it's pretty interesting. I didn't really think much of it, to be honest, after we did it. Other than it was an interesting snapshot into the time, that moment in time.
Well, I think
But
one of the ways he was trying to standardize it, Colin, and he mentioned the PAC study was dose, right? And so obviously, like if you can meter like a certain number of milligrams per puff, it would
yeah.
help him build his mathematical models to understand, okay, say the vape pen juice was, I don't know, 80% THC or something like that. And when you
Hmm.
take 5 puffs, you're metering a certain amount of THC into the body. And I think where they were interacting with packs was through that delivery. Okay, so when you take a draw of a vape pen and you're 85% THC in the tank,
Yep.
how much are you actually getting in, right? Like, and trying to tighten
Yeah.
things up.
Here, I found here, I'll share it one more time. So it was 28 studies or 28 subjects, 14 participants inhaled 2 hits of 8 milligrams of vapor, um, average 85% potency to 90% total active cannabinoids, TAC.
Exactly.
And then 14 participants inhaled 2 hits, 8 milligrams of vapor from the berry gelato. And that was a So the interesting thing here is one line is cannabis diverse terpene, the other line is botanical terpenes, right? And that was the other thing I was trying to prove was behind the scenes. I was really pushing that, hey, CDTs are like actually way more important to us than botanicals will ever be. And I know this for a fact from my olfactory and my own personal experience. I just don't have the data for it. So this really highlights that, to be honest. If you look at the chart down here, um, it's it just the way that it interacts with your body is far more impactful. Um, so it was really, I don't know. This is you're looking at is botanical real cannabis versus, I mean, not real cannabis versus botanical terpenes, right? So, and you're really seeing that here through this data, which I thought was really compelling and really fascinating to me. So,
Yeah, this is so cool. So these are the so-called PEL curves. PEL is again his measure of well, let's see, what does it say? Psychoactive effect level, so PEL.
yep,
And so what you can see is that that those numbers go up. And so
yep,
you know what, man, this is totally cool because
yeah,
this is not measuring driver impairment per se, but what it's
right,
measuring is that you are seeing levels of psychoactivity here. Now, I think the
right,
next step in terms of like driver impairment would be to
yep,
ask yourself, okay, at what PEL level do we start seeing slowed response to road hazards or the ability to turn right as soon as you see a car coming from the left, so all those things have to be done, but I think that this technology could be part of the that needs to
I,
be developed.
I love the idea of this technology being used to look for something good in being
yeah,
stoned instead of trying to find something that is going to cause people problems for being stoned. It seems like a cool Like when I see this graph right off the bat, I'm like, oh, look, a higher PEL for live rosin over high purity THC. It's just this elevated high. It's like that graph almost is like what it feels like to smoke rosin versus
Yeah.
diamonds.
Yeah,
no,
and
it's
Marcus,
true.
he had
It's
another
double.
comparison where he looked
It
at.
is, it's
I
not
think Colin, you may have mentioned this, where he added botanical terpenes to just vanilla distillate that wasn't
totally.
very high grade, and you could
So
totally see that the rosin one took off, and the distillate one barely got up off a baseline.
totally.
Yeah,
So that's what I wanted to say to like everyone out there just watching it. It's like the high purity line is a Delta 9 distillate product with botanical diverged terpenes that are, bought from, insert here the name I won't say. And then the live rosin is just live rosin. So you're seeing the difference in the segments, not only through what they are just as a product, but also just like how they interact with the body is far more impactful. And it's amazing. I mean,
Steve has his
I
hand
haven't
up.
I haven't looked at this graph in a long time. Go ahead.
Oh, all I was going to say was it's actually interesting um, how cannabis is behind in a lot of things, and we believe it's novel because this is exactly what they do for LSD, for mescaline, for
Right.
psilocybin. They look at them via EEG in order to know how the substances are affecting your brain. It's how they found out that LSD kind of shuts down the default network where your brain
Right.
kind of functions in silos, and each part feels like it has a different piece. And when you're on LSD, those parts kind of synchronize together. They use this same technology for that. So every drug that we've kind of talked about, they've already used this technology for. So it makes sense that they would use it for something else to try to figure out how it's affecting our minds.
You'd think they would
Right.
just sit in a room and get high. Like, what the
Yep.
hell? Like
Yeah.
all these incredible machines and equipments and degrees. It's just like we're going to start with a bioassay. That'll be our foundation. And then we'll sort of branch. That's why I have an appreciation for Dr. Mark, because he's a firm believer in the bioassay.
Oh, absolutely. And if anything, so I think, Stephen, your comment is right on. I think this is, again, one of the reasons why they have to use machine learning and AI to put these models together. And you're absolutely right, Marcus. I love to get high. And what this data represents is the scientific data that says, okay, when Mark is high, what is his brain what's his brain doing? My PEL is over here. But the fact that, he had mentioned this rosin study versus distillate, I already knew what those curves were going to look like before he showed the slide. And then when he showed the slide, it's like, yeah, it's exactly what we would have predicted, which is that live quality rosin is going to win all the time. The wonderful thing was, I think, if I remember correctly, if to remember the study, the distillate pen had more THC in it, had more THC than the live rosin pen, but the live rosin pen showed the PEL go through the roof, and the distillate one never made it up off the baseline. That's great, right? It's like
Yeah, it
science
was
is
cool.
like, yeah, it's the
Yeah.
science that validates our own bioassay, which is, I could have looked at that data and said, yeah, live rosin is going to get me higher, even it's a lower percentage of THC, but, yeah, how
I can
cool
tell
is it?
you, Dr. Mark, there was a lot of debate behind the scenes about what the results were going to be before those results came out, and it was overwhelmingly the opposite way.
Yeah, I'll bet.
So I I was very pleased to have a little smile on my face when I saw those results. It just shows like the plant can do so much on its own. You know, we can design a lot of things and create, a lot of great things in the lab, but nature's chemist is
Well, it kind of
magic.
validates the whole entourage effect. Like we
Yeah.
know, I mean, those of us who consume high quality artisan products know it's not just about the THCA or THC concentration. It has to do with the terpenes and everything else that's in there.
Yeah.
This is scientific data in a laboratory setting that actually validates that thinking, and it validates like what Marcus was saying about our bioassay. Yeah, we know when we feel high. Well, here's, scientific data that says that this group was more higher than this group.
Yeah. It's cool. You could you could get, you could expand, I think, the protocol a little bit. You could do, I think as Steve was kind of alluding to, just more and add more to get more from a particular study and incorporate this data to try to have a broader conversation about how it affects the body and for how long. So
Yeah. I think Canada has honestly done some really good research on this. And as a scientist here in the US, it always kind of hurts to realize that I don't know if the broader audience knows this, Countries don't all agree on science, which is why there's a journal of something there's an American journal of this, there's a British journal of this, there's an Australian and a Japanese journal of this. There's certain topics that make it to the international level that they all agree on, but Canada has plenty of evidence. If the US was actually to just look at it, just objectively, just look at the endocannabinoid system research that's already going on in labs, they would have plenty of evidence. Like descheduling wouldn't have even been a question. But the truth is, because it's been done in Canada, the US scientists don't have to respect it at all. They don't have to acknowledge it. It's very unfortunate. It's not supposed to be like that, Dr. Mark, right? But the truth is, these studies do exist, and the US could objectively look at those and deschedule, and that would change all the regulation that goes towards the research we can do. But as long as the US, in its position of influence and power, chooses to not acknowledge those type of research studies that are already being done, even the ones that are going on here in the US, there's researchers at universities where people are doing cannabis research that don't know they're at the same university. Happens all the time. It's like, hey, did you know somebody at Harvard's doing this type of research? And they're like, no, you guys are both professors here. So that's the issue. Like, as much as we're talking about the science and the possibility, all the technology's there. There's plenty of funding. If you can't say anything, sick kids and veterans are two really good populations if you're going to break the rules for something good. And all of those are objective reasons to do the science, and we don't. So I'm glad that you guys are saying somebody is doing it that's private, because it's really hard to get universities to do that.
Yeah, man. I mean, Dr. Mark, you remember Thomas Jefferson University's like Lambert School and how that was supposed to be the thing. And, it's too bad that we don't, those things don't follow through on the promise, the way they say. It's a shame sometimes, but there are, it feels like, Steve, sometimes you have people that are trying to get to the good, but along the way there's a lot of things calling it back, and it's tough, man. It's like you're right. There's like so much awesome research done around the world daily. Um, and I wonder, like, Dr. Mark, from your perspective, why wouldn't someone respect it country to country in your opinion?
Yeah, well, part of it is the whole, lockup that NIDA's got. And, right now our National Institute of Health has been shut down, so they're not issuing any more research dollars, which is really our tax dollars, to go to researchers like myself and other people who want to do cannabis-related research. Maybe it's the perfect time for um, private companies like PAX or like this company in Toronto to really, pick up the ball, because getting you the precipice that the United States was on for many years, and I'll be pro US here and say that we were the leaders in biomedical research for so many years. And if you look at the inventions of everything from penicillin to glucose sensing to MRI imaging, a lot of that happened here in the continental US. I think the problem with cannabis has been always it's been stigmatized as being something that if you want to get federal research dollars from, you have to be able to demonstrate. It's kind of like what we were talking about before, a negative aspect of cannabis, right? You can't really illustrate a positive aspect. Now, that said, a lot of NIDA research, NIDA is the National Institute of Drug Abuse. And in general, for the most part, they are anti-cannabis from the point of view that they're interested in how cannabis could be used as a replacement therapy for other more addictive things like opiates, right? So there is NIDA funded research saying, can we use cannabis to replace opiates or other things that are more addictive, right? Because again, that's what the National Institute of Drug Abuse is looking at. But the National Center for Complementary Medicine is a huge a funder of cannabis related research, and from what I understand, RFK shut that shit down. So a big silo of funding research for cannabis looking at positive things has been shut down. Now, that said, there are other institutes within the National Institute of Health, like the National Institute of Generalized Medicine. They are funding cannabis research and they are looking at different aspects. We saw this really great talk from a South African researcher. I met her for the first time. Her name was Shiksa. I forget what her last name is right now, but what she was showing, she's particularly studies men's health and prostate cancer. And Colin, you should have seen this data set that she showed the other day. Fucking amazing, man. So what they're showing is that if you combine cannabis and they were using, again, not smoked cannabis, but mostly tinctures. If you combine cannabis with chemotherapy, they almost get complete remission of all the patients in that cohort. Where if you look at just chemotherapy alone, not even close. I mean, you could look at
What
this
was the
data.
delivery? What was the delivery mechanism? Did they cite that? Like, was it inhalation or was it like
No,
a?
I think she was exclusively just, she's in South Africa, so
Oh,
she's
got it.
somewhat limited on what she
So it's
has
probably
access to.
inhalation.
And
Yeah.
I think she was just using whole plant extracts as tinctures. I talked to her a little bit about extraction and tinctures and whatnot, but it's like when you look at this data and you look at chemotherapy alone, like if you're getting prostate
Yep.
cancer right now, probably you're getting a regimen of anti-cancer drugs and chemotherapy. But if you look at the combination of chemotherapy plus cannabinoids, there's no
Yep.
question that's a much, much more effective um, in terms of patient recovery to where they're in
Sure.
complete remission, completely, cancer free. And what they found, which, I think we're seeing more and more of this, is that the can cannabinoids somehow are synergizing with the chemotherapy and anti-cancer drugs that they commonly prescribe. So they can prescribe these things at much lower doses. And if you know anybody who's been through chemotherapy, it is fucking just terrible. It's the
Yep.
most god-awful thing to ever have to go through. You lose your hair, you lose your appetite, you just feel like shit. You don't even feel like it just cannabis helps counter all of those negative effects of chemotherapy. It should almost be used, like they should almost make a law or a rule where if you're going to give chemotherapy to a cancer patient, you should also put them on cannabis. The data is just completely overwhelming that the cohort of her patients, which had cannabis plus chemotherapy, were so much better than the cohort that just had chemotherapy alone. And she did look at a cohort that had just cannabis alone. And
Yeah.
while that was a lot better than the chemotherapy cohort, it still wasn't as good as chemotherapy plus cannabis. No
Right.
question about it.
I mean, I think of David, in this moment, how he chased the idea of replacing Marinol and he went to Amsterdam to do it, right? Like that was his whole dream. At least that's my understanding of it. Maybe correct me if I'm wrong, Marcus, anyone. But it's it's fascinating to me all these years later, we're still chasing the same thing. It's amazing. But it's, what a cool data set, that's truth right there, as you're getting to. It's what
Yeah,
we need more of, you know.
her name is Shiksa Gallo, and she's a cannabis clinician at the Holistic Integrative Healing Institute, which is down in South Africa, where she is. Absolutely very dynamic speaker. She just gave a very, very over the top presentation showing medical efficacy of cannabis and prostate cancer. I mean,
Cool.
I was sitting in the audience just completely blown away by her data.
Well, that's cool.
That's awesome.
Really
What's to
cool
come of
stuff.
that? Like, is there more, is she doing more, is she releasing a white paper around it? Like, do you know what?
Well, I think she's got a couple pharmaceutical companies who are very interested because she's looking specifically at prostate cancer. I asked her about some of the analogs that we've made. I mean, we're showing activity against what are called Jurkat cells, which are leukemic cancer cells. So what we hope, or I'm sorry, leukemic T cells. So T cells that have been infected with leukemia and are now cancerous. We're showing that our HHCA, which is hydrogenated THCA, and we've now done the separation of the 9R isomer from the 9S isomer. And it's really fascinating, Colin. What we're seeing is that the 9S isomer is more active than the 9R isomer, which is completely the opposite of how these things work on the CB1 receptor. So again, it points to the fact that we're probably hitting a different receptor other than CB1. We don't know what that receptor is, but that just says that around every new data, there's 10 different new experiments to run to try to figure out how these things are working and see if we can get them to work better. But yeah, really cool stuff. I wanted to point out one other researcher who I was unaware of. His name was Mandeep. Um, Hold on, I just pulled up his webpage. Mandeep Sachdeva, and he is the title of his talk was Synergistic Anti-Cancer Activity of Cannabinoids and Terpenes Overcoming Resistance in Triple Negative Breast Cancer. Oh my God, was his data so compelling? I mean, you look at this data, and again, even if you don't know medical science, and even if you don't know chemistry or cannabinoid science, you would look at his data and say, why aren't we doing this? Why aren't we prescribing cannabis? And he was looking at some of the more prevalent terpenes, Colin. So he looked at beta caryophyllene, and he was looking at um, some of the minor cannabinoids. So this was the guy that looked at CBC, but he was also looking at CBDV, CBN, CBG, and a variety of the different terpenes, including bisabolol, myrcene, linalool, limonene,
Visible.
geraniol, nerolidol, alpha-pinene. So he understands again that, yeah, there is this real entourage effect in whole plant medicine that we don't see with single active ingredients. And it's so against the medical establishment to look at this polypharmacy type of medication, right? We can only handle one active ingredient at a time. But I think Mandeep's lecture, again, just like Shikska's lecture, was very, very eye-opening to me. And I'm going to be reaching out to him tomorrow, and we're going to get on a phone call because we think there's all kinds of collaborative work we could do. So for me and Harold, so Harold was the emulsion chemist, I was the active ingredient chemist. We're like literally kids in a candy store because now we have access to all these doctors who want to see new medicines. And yeah, so Harold was highly sought after at the conference, as was I. So it's just a great place to be when you're a chemist.
Did you get pulled over by anyone and say, "Hey, are you that guy from Hash Church?" I'm just
No, well, Marcus, so they did with all of the participants, they did kind of like a 2 minute little video thing. I forget who the woman was that was doing that, but they're going to post all that. And they said,
nice.
how can we find you, Dr. Mark? Like where? And I was like, whoa, I'm on every Sunday. I mentioned Hash Church, mentioned you, Bubble Man. And yeah, so I think there's going to
Nice.
be some social media pushes that, the McKernans use the year in between the CanMeds to really talk about the presentations that were made at CanMed and really try to market next year's, conference. This is not a cheap a conference to go to. I think for an outsider, I think if you're not like a speaker or if you're not on their panel, I think it's somewhere around 25 to $2,800 for like a 3 day conference. It's like $1,000 a day, man. That's a lot of money. And certainly to be in a tropical location like Puerto Rico is absolutely beautiful. But what they're telling us is next year is going to be the 10th year, and they want to bring it back here to New England. So I was pushing for Vermont. The ski towns up here
Yeah.
could certainly accommodate those kinds of conferences. But Dustin, who's up in Maine, he was pulling for Maine. But it's going to be up here in New England, so hopefully that'll increase accessibility. And yeah, man, I mean, I don't know. The McKernans have certainly rubbed some people in the wrong way in the industry. I mean, Kevin's a pretty controversial guy. I know I think he's an advisor to RFK, so I think that's a good thing, right? Maybe, he'll get cannabis over the goal line. We've had Kevin on before, right, Marcus? Kevin's been on a couple
Oh
times,
yeah, yeah,
right?
he's been on a few
Yeah.
times for sure. The
Kevin's a
last one we did was on aspergillus, the testing,
Yeah.
the lab testing.
Yeah, Kevin's I like Kevin. He's done a lot of fun stuff with me and trusted my plants that were super sick, and I had a lot of fun dispelling and understanding what, hop latent viroid is or isn't. And
Hmm.
I think he went off and that sparked him to do even more, which I thought was amazing. And, I think he's, yeah, he's, everyone's got opinionated, right? But I think that he's trying to do some good here. And I think there's a lot of really cool things that they have done and they continue to do. They're really big believers in the plant and what its possibilities are. I mean, CanMed is an amazing, like, I wish more conferences would have, aspects of what, even a fraction of what they bring to the table there for the presentations. So, but Canopedia has been really amazing for me. So that's my, that's how I view it. I think they're trying to do some good. That's how I see it.
Well, they're interfacing with the community of doctors, and I think they've built credibility with, by having doctors like Dustin. For those of you who don't know Dustin Sulak, go look up thehealer.com and you could hear all about what Dustin's been doing. He's been doing medical cannabis for, I think about, a couple decades now. They often have, Bonnie couldn't attend because she had I think a family emergency, or maybe one of her patients was slipping away and she couldn't make it, but she had some of her data presented there. Deb Kimless, who's also a widely known um, medical doctor. I mean, these are the doctors that can be used to convince more doctors that, when a patient comes in to your office, that you should think about cannabis not as a last resort, but almost as a first resort. And before prescribing FDA pharmaceuticals with a litany of side effects, maybe try prescribing cannabis. So I think they've tapped into that group of doctors, Colin, and that group of doctors could be like, you know, I don't know, I'll just get biblical for a second. Could be like, Jesus's disciples, right? So the disciples were there to spread the good word. So maybe these doctors can be there to spread the good word and to say, hey, look at this data, right? When you look at Shiksa's data, you can't help but, geez, I have a patient that has prostate cancer. I should be not just giving them chemotherapy, they should be getting chemotherapy and cannabis. And here's the data that I can point to. Does the FDA approve of that? Well, fuck the FDA. They're behind the eight ball on this.
Just a
And
little. I mean, think of how many people do you think die from chemotherapy annually versus die from cannabis? Just on like a guesstimation.
the hell
Because
with
I heard
chemotherapy, Marcus. Peanuts. People die from peanut
from
allergies,
peanuts
right?
and
There's
salt.
like, yeah, 25 deaths a year that's attributed to aflatoxins, which is the peanut mycotoxin infected peanuts. So peanuts are more dangerous than cannabis, right? Yet you can go to any of the Major League Baseball parks and you could get, bags full of peanuts, and people are eating peanuts as they're watching baseball. It's a great American pastime. I like eating peanuts and drinking a beer at a ballpark just like anybody else. But the facts are, and the statistics prove it, is that cannabis is safer than peanuts, people.
And it's
Okay.
definitely
Certainly
safer
safer
than
than
chemo.
chemotherapy.
They put the retrospective
Like,
audits worldwide say that the 30-day mortality after chemotherapy therapy is between 8.1 and 43%.
Right.
That's fucking insane. Holy
Right. But when
Christ.
you get cancer, sometimes you really need the chemo. It depends on how widespread the cancer is and whether or not you've had metastasis, whether it's something that could be removed by surgery itself. Often with many kinds of cancer, like prostate cancer is highly uh, or undergoes metastasis, which is basically the spreading of those cancer cells or the tumor fragments all throughout the body. So you have to get it. Early detection is absolutely important. Please, all men, go get your prostate tested. Prostate cancer, I think, is the number two cancer killer of men. It's as prevalent as breast cancer is in women. So just as often as women get breast examinations, we should get when you go in and you get your prostate measured, they can do it physically, but you often, as part of your blood work, will get something called PSA, which is prostate specific antigen, which is basically the protein that your body makes when you start having prostate cancer. So you want to make sure that you don't have elevated levels of PSA, but even that is pretty controversial in RFK's era here. So get your prostate checked, man.
I try to
And for
check mine
women out
every
there,
day.
That was a Bob Weir. He just finished the set.
yeah, get get your breast checked. Oh,
And
I
then
wanted
and
to bring
then
up one.
throw Phil in there as well, and make sure you
I
give your
mean, Phil.
organs away when you die on your license.
I
So
meant Phil. Yeah, I meant
so
Phil, not Bobby.
I know.
Harold Hahn, our emulsion chemist at Vertosa, gave a really excellent talk, and he talked about a textbook or a book that's out there called The Six Beverages That Changed Civilization, or The Six Glasses That Changed Civilization. So let's see if we can name them. What are the six beverages that changed human civilization? I bet you we could name a bunch of them, right? What do you think they were? Anybody? Caleb, what do you think?
Pache.
Coca-Cola is definitely on the list, but beer,
Yes,
obviously.
yeah,
Beer is
beer's on the list.
like
Coca-Cola's on the list.
old school. And then if beer's on the list, then wine has to be on the list because it's
Wine
beer
is
and
also on the
wine.
list.
And if it's
Yes,
beer and
Champagne.
wine, it's also spirits.
Dude.
Beer, wine, and spirits.
yes, yes.
Fucking coffee.
Coffee's one, right? So
Coffee.
we're
And
missing
then
one more.
I don't do coffee, I do tea. Tea
Yeah,
was
Yes,
like
tea.
tea's got to
yeah.
be on that. Tea's
So
got to be
those are
like,
the
which one goes back the furthest out of those beverages?
yeah. Well, so it's really
Tea?
interesting. So yes,
Tea.
those are the six beverages, or I think it's called the six. If you look it up on Google, I think you look for the six glasses that changed civilization, and you'll find those six beverages. But as I was sitting in the
That's fucking
audience
crazy.
stewing about this, I was for sure thinking that milk would be one of those, right? Because milk is just this weird fucking thing, right? It comes from the udder of a cow, right? And,
Or a
and
goat.
yeah, or goat. Yeah, I don't know about you guys, but what I remember in elementary school, like when we went for lunch in the cafeteria, everyone had a lunch tray and there was a carton of milk on everyone's lunch tray, right? So I thought for sure milk would be one of those beverages. And you have to almost think again back to the origins. Who was the first guy who drank cow's milk? And did he actually go up to the udder and suck it out of the cow?
And did he have
Like,
breast milk from a woman first? And did that
well,
give him the idea?
so, Marcus, you bring up a great point. The first beverage that most of us get as a human being is breast milk. And you would think that, again, yeah,
If
breast
you're
milk
lucky.
might be one of and I don't know about you, but I prefer mother's milk over cow's milk. It comes in the cutest containers, right?
I love them.
Right? But, and you think about like milk too, like milk got converted into cheese and yogurt and ice cream. I mean, milk is actually, I think, should be on there. But Harold's whole point of bringing this up is he believes that THC infused beverages is going to be the seventh beverage that changes human civilization.
Wow. Well, it
I think
definitely,
it's
I mean,
hilarious.
listen, we know that when we consume, we alter our biome, which alters our perspective and our consciousness. And so, when you look back at these different, I'm sure tea was very quite proper, for many, many years. And then all of a sudden, alcohol showed up, and that was different. Maybe it was more working class, and they're just so specifically different that it'll be interesting to see how much consumption of THC beverages change the way people think. Because that's really what it's all about, right? All of these beverages that were named had massive ramifications on how the population thinks.
Right.
And I'm quite certain it's one of the reasons why they would want people to be afraid of cannabis and make it illegal and have all this propaganda out there, because it definitely changes the way you think. There's no doubt about that. I mean, look at Etienne. Jesus Christ, this guy smokes so much. And because of it, he's out there saving the world. Like, I want to say that the smoking aspect of what Etienne has been doing most of his life is a very important factor in what drives him to do it.
Without a doubt. I mean, it feeds me, whereas yeah, other people are like, I don't know how you can handle it. Yeah,
I
because
don't know how you can't.
exactly. When I go into crisis control, and I've had to deal with various crises over almost 26 years doing, dispensing, and yeah, I would get busted smoking a joint, thinking about what I need to do next. It grounds me, keeps me, puts me where I need to be, whereas other people, it doesn't work for them. But yeah, the term high functioning stoner, yeah, definitely is in my vocabulary, and I'm surprised at how many people are not. But at the same time, it's always frustrated me because of it's why I've never been a fan of a lot of the stoner movies, because of a lot of the dumb stoner stuff. You know what I'm saying? It's really, it's offensive to me. And, my friends like Dennis Perone and Jack Herrera and Dr. Todd McCrea and Michael Crowitz and others that, yeah, totally dispel that. And, you almost look at how those mm, projections were um, um, projected on us specifically to keep us down, in the sense of oh, you can't have intelligent stoners. They're all dumb and stupid. Or, reefer madness, right? That, oh, we're gonna go crazy and kill people, right? You know what I'm saying? So, we got caught in that crossfire, and I've not found a demographic that for me, except people like all of you on Hash Church. You know what I'm saying? And others that I've met out and about from, that are on Hash Church, that are people who do get it, that can function. And on top of that, they didn't forget their keys or what they're talking about, or to do their research, or to vote, or do these things which we've been mocked in the media, time and time again, for because that's the only pot shot they can take, because the last thing they want to know is that Carl Sagan, one of their most respected scientists, was a huge proponent and user of cannabis, and he had to hide it and hide behind it because of the stigma and the misinformation and myth information as well. That is a stigma that affected one of the most intelligent men to ever walk this planet.
Yeah. For
So,
those of you that haven't read his book, check out The Pale Blue Dot.
yeah, you want to feel humble real quick. That man's yeah, and his wife Andrea, just amazing. You know what I'm saying? She wrote a lot of that, and yeah, it's just amazing how,
That's
um,
us.
yeah, that's us, that little blue dot. That's everything. Everything you know, everything you believe, every religion. Yeah, I could hear his voice. You know what I'm saying? He was just so prolific to my and our generation. You know what I'm saying? We look back with it
Billions and
fondly, and
billions and
unfortunately,
billions and billions, right?
in billions and billions. Yeah. It's yeah, and then of course our friend, of the show, Lester Grinspoon, was his best man. You know what I'm saying? I mean, that's how literally tight, it is at the cannabis community. He helped save his son, you know what I'm saying? So, you know, it's just, yeah, it's frustrating to be lumped into stupid and always be made to feel that way because of your choice of medicine. And it's unfair, it's unjust, and it's just one of those lumps you have to take. You know what I'm saying in life? Look at that. Look at that. Look at those suits, ladies and gentlemen. Look at that hair.
Dude, Lester's a pimp.
Right?
I
Yeah.
am
So,
very glad that Todd brought him on to Hash Church back in the day. I remember the first time he came on Hash Church, it was one of those rare days where I kind of couldn't be here and I kind of had to like be away. And it was this sort of like, damn, like I want to hang out with Dr. Lester Grinspoon on Hash Church. But yeah, hearing him tell the story of Danny and smoking his first joint, and which is of course the whole reason Marijuana Reconsidered was written. Very powerful stuff. Two incredible men. If you're young and you're hearing these names for the first time, get Marijuana Reconsidered. Check out the Pale Blue Dot. Google Carl Sagan. Google Dr. Lester Grinspoon. These are pretty incredible men. They had pretty vast lives, and they made a dent in our perspective and our consciousness, and they shall not be forgotten.
and Lester is not just a strain, pardon me, a genetic.
Yeah, exactly.
Shout out
Although
to
it is a
Ryan
really
there.
good one.
It is, yeah. It's just that it takes some time.
Absolutely.
I'm
Absolutely.
surprised
Well,
no one's named a Sagan. You know what I'm saying? We've got Lester, we've got Jack. Somebody needs to create a Carl Sagan. You know what I'm saying? And what would that terpene profile be, Dr. Mark? What would be as unique and as,
It would be
he
out of
was
this
one of
world.
the most intelligent,
yeah,
not the,
out
right?
of this
He was
world.
one of the most. What would encompass that breadth?
Yeah, it would be something out of this world, right? It'd probably have some relevant to space or something like Carl Sagan Kush or something like that.
I'm thinking like a bluish anthocyanin producing
Yeah.
cultivar that can produce blue rosin that can be made into dots, and we can sell it as the pale blue dots. Is that appropriate?
Yeah, I don't know. Everyone always asks me, all the Breaking Bad fans out there is like, "Hey, Dr. Mark, can you really make blue meth, right? Is there such a thing as blue methamphetamine?" I think it makes entertaining television, but and remember for a while, I don't know if you remember this, Marcus. I think we talked about this on Hash Church, right? There was a couple people who were making colored dabs. I think they were. I'm not sure if they were diamonds or BHO, but they were, and I don't know if they were just using food coloring just to get the Instagram splash of, ooh, I made blue diamonds, whatever. But could you actually isolate an azulene fraction that's blue enough to color your hash blue? And for purple, you could probably use CBD hydroquinone, which is intensely purple in color, to make purple hash. But I don't know if the world needs artificially colored hash.
I mean, I'm sure people would love it, just like they love Fruit Loops and botanical
Yeah.
terps, and I'm not saying that in a judgmental way. I'm honest. I think people would definitely love it. I wouldn't. It would frighten me and disturb me. I definitely like the idea of the points, those little points that Bobby La Calada was doing in Barcelona. I don't know if he started it a year ago or if it was just this year, but like super cool and impressive and unique and different and novel. I suspect he's liquefying the rosin and
Mm.
then creating like a pipette where he just pushes it out onto silicone onto these tiny little drops. They're hilarious in the sense that they named they call them points, which I was just like, oh my God, dude, that is hilarious. We saw them for the first time when I did Jar Check with Jolly Roger at the Ego Clash in Barcelona this last March. And they're just like, I was trying to find the picture, but sometimes the internet lets me down and I have too many hard drives. But I'll try to find it one more time. They're just these perfect little points. They're like actually pretty cool looking. They call them points because it's 1/10 of a gram each. I was like, I live in a city where hard drugs are a major problem, and I don't think points is going to go over well. in my city or Etienne City for that matter. Um, but it was a very cool concept. And when I saw it, I was like, dude, this is actually like super cool. You know, these perfect little rosin balls, basically, like flat little discs that you could just pick out of the jar with your fingers. They weren't sticky. It was more of a sort of sugared out kind of product, but very cool. I like novelty. I like different things. Not so much like artificial colors. That being said, I definitely thought what Oli was doing, we had him on here, the guy that was doing all the holography. He sent me one recently, and I can show you this. This is THCA that he stamped, diffracted, whatever you call it. It's just THCA, but he put this. He's talking about a cold chain custody supply chain because if you understand holographs, so yeah, there you can see the holograph appearing. There's no inks. There's no like. There's nothing there. That's just THCA. But he's like microscopically stamped in a diffraction so you can see the colors and the pot leaf that are coming off of it when the light shines on it. He was talking about earlier creating one that's a super thin disc and why that is if it reaches a certain temperature, he can create holograms. And this is why they don't work on chocolate because they haven't figured out a way to stabilize it. The chocolate shifts ever so slightly in its texture, whether it liquefies ever so microscopically and lightly, the hologram disappears because it's not anything added. It's just like a microscopic stamp that diffracts it in a way that it picks up and catches and shows these beautiful lights and these colors. And so I love the idea down in the future when we have a cold supply chain, when we have a cold supply chain. Oh my God when we have a cold supply chain and you can use these little discs as kind of, how you go about showing that, yes, the cold supply chain was kept because when you open that jar, and it would maybe have to be a baller jar, but a super thin disc of THCA just sitting right on top that has a little, maybe it has cold supply chain and a pattern or a logo in the middle and that just disappears when the cold supply chain is broken and the resin gets too warm. You get your jar, you open it, you have a disc of THCA on top, but there's no hologram on it. That
Right.
tells you that the cold chain has been broken. Kind of cool for the future. I mean, right now we don't even have a
Really
cold
cool.
supply chain, but it is cool, right?
Really, really cool. I mean, that diffraction, every time you look at a rainbow, right? That's basically what you're seeing, right? Is that the sunlight is sort of being split, which is white light, into the individual, spectrum of light, which is what you see when you see a rainbow, right? I
Mhm.
mean, yeah, absolutely fantastic. Beautiful little physics lesson there on light diffraction. But yeah, really, that's such a cool idea, Marcus. I love that.
Yeah, he's definitely doing cool things. There's no doubt about that. It's a lot of the stuff he's shown me I have never really seen before or even considered. I never
Right.
considered it. I just was like, I never even thought of that. And that also excites me a great deal. When you've spent as much time, I think it's what drove Skunkman Sam, to be honest. I really do. His interest in finding the new and keeping his finger on the pulse was one of the things I admired about him in the industry and how willing he was. He knew everyone. Anyone that was doing anything of any substance, he would know you. He would just reach out to you, be like, "Hey, I'm Dave Watson. Like, we need to communicate because I like what you're doing." And yeah, that's what it's all about, man. Innovation. It's pretty
Well, it's
cool.
thinking outside the box, right? And then applying it, right? It's that ideation we're talking about, right? You have to think about it, but to be there to think about it, you have to be in that right space. And yeah, for many conceptualists like that, cannabis helps them get there. So, it doesn't surprise me that, there's some of the most creative people as well, and those that are also able to solve real world problems because we time and time again, we stoners have over and over again overcome obstacles. And
Yeah,
the easiest thing is to put stoners in a room with cannabis and no way to smoke it, and they will come up with something. They will find
totally.
something.
Well, look at this guy. This is, have you ever considered this? This is how fucking deep this guy thinks. What if we made a THCA lens and we used it to do solar bowls? What if we used THCA and the sun to light our bowls and take a rip with? Just one more thing I've absolutely never considered or thought of. It's nice to think outside the box. Unless the box has like a lot of really good flavorful dabs inside, then it's like it's good to spend some time in that box. Like that's a good box. I also like bento boxes. Those are good boxes. Bento boxes for the win. Hello. Teriyaki salmon. Oh, well, we have like about 38 minutes left. We didn't get to say goodbye to Steven. That's too bad. And Craig had to bounce and Colin had to bounce, but we got another 38 minutes. I don't know where you guys want to go with it or what you want to get into, but I'm sure something will arrive. Oh, I know. We got to give this spoon away. Holy shit. I forgot this a long time ago. 66 entries only right now. I'll go on to the giveaway so that people can see the transparency. Really straightforward. I will try to get it up to like 80 or 90, but this is one of the new collection spoons from the Press Club. Really impressed with it. It's fucking awesome. And man, you won't even want to throw the box away. You'll almost want this spoon to live in this box. It's so just nice. But yeah, thanks to the Press Club for the sponsorship and giving away the spoon. We got 70 entries. I'll wait till about 80 and then we'll hit it. Then I need you to send me an email at bcbubbleman@icloud.com. And I will have Bingo Lombardi post that into the chat right after the winner has been announced. So you'll see it in the chat. Send me an email as humanly possible because what I'm going to do is give you something to say in chat under the name that you won. And that confirms to me that you're just not some random person sending me an email. It confirms to me that you are the person in the YouTube chat that won the spoon. The super spoon. Yes. How you enter, Hooligan? You just entered by typing, how do you enter? That's how you enter. How fucking cool is that? We're making this as easy as possible. So just by asking how you enter, you have automatically been entered. So yeah, we'll get your name. We'll connect you to your name with your email address. I'll forward it off to Jeffrey and the good folks at the Press Club, and they'll ship out your spoon for you. Well, they'll reach out to you and make sure that they got the right address and whatnot. But all right, we got 92. Let's hit it. I think that's good enough. Let's choose a winner. Chicken Dinner HR Inc. You've won HR Inc. So bingo, if you want to put that email up there, bcbubbleman@icloud.com. I'm just going to photograph that so I can remember. And then, yeah, sweet. HR Inc. just won. Do you know the first time I did one of these, the guy's name was Ben Inya? And I didn't even catch it, but it was like Bin Inya. I think you might have pointed it out at Tiang. I can't remember. It was pretty funny though. Like, fuck, dude, these you just can't even make this shit up. The ridiculousness and the hilarity when everyone's being their authentic self. Yes, Way HR Inc. You won the spoon, and if you don't make hash, maybe this spoon will be an inspiration for you to get into making hash. You can get a little 1 gallon set of bags at bubblebag.com for like $100. And you could be using that spoon to hand mix up some medicine of goodness. So I need you to send me an email, HR, BC Bubbleman. There it is. Bingo Lombardi just put it up. Send me that email so I can give you the sentence of what you need to say in chat. Type in chat, and we'll get that sent out to you. Thanks, Press Club, for making it fun. Sorry I waited till like 12:30 to give it away. I usually try to do it at like 11 at the halfway point. Spoon! That's right. Word. They are really cool. I gotta say, these collection spoons are cool. In fact, my wife, who does not make hash at all, I got a few of these from the press club, and I was like, I always want to share with my wife. So I came out and showed her the box. She's like, "What's this?" I'm like, "It's a spoon." And she looked at it and she picked it up and she was like, "This is a nice spoon." I'm like, "Yeah, like, do you want that for like the chilies or like any of the good meals that you make?" She's like, "Yeah, I'd love it." I'm like, "Okay." So she was just excited to get the spoon for the kitchen, as hash makers have been excited to get them for pulling hash out of the bag. So who doesn't want a big fucking spoon? In fact, I now dub this the big fucking spoon. That'll kill my sponsorships, but no, I love it. This is a really cool spoon, man. Super, super cool. I'm gonna show it off one more time. Just, what I always, whenever I'm making bubble, and I can't even imagine how many times I've forgotten this. I'll just end up at someone's house. This is back in the day. "Oh, do you have a spoon?" And it's kind of like, the spoon that you want to have it a fairly thin edge so that you can scoop nice off the nylon screen and really kind of get it tight in there. But you also want a big spoon, and that is a nice size spoon. So shout out to those guys. Talk about a hash nerd when you're really passionate about a spoon. Like, what is wrong with me? Something for certain.
Quality man who knows quality tools. So that goes to the territory. So
Yeah, I guess that is it. I'm gonna check to see if I got the email from HR. Because wouldn't that be awesome if he already sent it? Yep, I got it. So let me just give him something to say in the chat here. What should I get him to say? Oh, I know. Let me see. All right. See that in chat, and we wrote confirm this is you. It's too bad that I live in a world that I just can't trust that this is obviously the guy who won the spoon. But you never know, and I'd hate to like me drop the ball and then the wrong guy get the spoon and the right guy not get the spoon. So let's see if he writes what I told him to write. Here it comes. Clear domes is Bingo Lombardi's guess. That's what his guess is. Let's see if that's what it is. Dave Chappelle's. No, Full Melt again. Okay, I'm lame. No, it's not that. Let's see where he is. Let's see if he got his email. Technology is wild, how fast we're able to communicate. If you think of how long it took to communicate, if you think of metaphorically the amount of data just traveling from here to here from like 200 years ago and how exponentially, there it is. I love Dr. Mark, HR Inc. That was what he was supposed to say, and that's what he said. And the bottom line is, it's true. I do love Dr. Mark. I appreciate you showing
Well,
up all the time and being with us and fucking, I could blow smoke up your ass all day long, dude, but we really do appreciate you here in the community.
well, thank you so much. Thank you. It's always a pleasure to join this discussion with my Hash Church brothers. And yeah, I talk about Hash Church all the time, Marcus. When I was down there at CanMed, dropped your name a bunch of times. And yeah, I mean, this is really special what we got going here, right? I mean, you don't just snap your fingers and have 10 years worth of history on the internet, you know? I mean, think about those who've, left us like Sam and Wade recently. Uh, I mean, we got to keep this thing going, and let's be here 10 years from now to talk about 20 years of Hash Church, right, Mark?
Dude, I honestly couldn't believe it was that we were in the 11th year. I was kind of
Yeah.
blown away. And I know I did like 3 years straight and then I took a little bit off and I did some and I took off and I did some. And I'm very happy in the 11th year for us to be consistently gathering every week that we can gather. And that consistency really does. I mean, honestly, it's taken 10 years to cultivate this audience, this core group of 200 to 300 people that like watch every single week
Yeah.
with us, and the 3 to 5 thousand people that watch within the first 7 days is a really cool. I mean, on the internet, sometimes you can get lost when you see a monkey farting or whatever, and it gets 400 million views. You can get lost in those numbers. That's an unfathomable number, obviously, the virility, the viralness of that. But if you think like 7,000 like-minded people, like if we had an event, a hash church event, which was
Right.
just the equivalent of us 1 week of our hash church, all those people, 7 to 10,000 people just coming and hanging out and being like, oh, I got turned on to you. The stories and the ripple effect of all of those people into so many different walks of life. It's pretty cool to be a part of.
Well, and again, I don't want to dwell on those who are no longer with us, like Sam and Wade, and we can't, forget Horatio too.
Horatio.
And in fact, if it wasn't for Horatio, Marcus, he was the one who introduced us, right? So
Yep.
you wouldn't know who I am. I wouldn't have been on Hash Church if it wasn't for Horatio. So,
Which speaks
and,
volumes of Horatio because he was always one of the smartest guys in the room, and he always
Mhm.
loved to be the smartest guy in the room. But what he wanted more than anything was to bring a smarter guy in. He'd be like, dude, like you got to bring like this guy. Like I'm telling you, I befriended him, and I think he'd be really great. I'm like, dude, of course, bring him on. Like what the fuck? Like you don't have to like sell it to me. Like you could have just said, can I invite my friend? I would have been like,
Well, it's
yeah.
funny. I think you're absolutely right. I think he was normally in his circles the smartest guy in the room. And again, I never professed to be the smartest guy in the room, but I think when I started having a dialogue with him, um, I think he recognized that he had so much to learn because he
Oh
was
yeah.
just doing that LHO. Remember the LHO thing?
Yep.
And he didn't know much about the chemistry of limonene and terpenes. And through just, talking with him and showing him some of the literature on that, he was really able to evolve his knowledge, right? And to move, his thing forward because of like the stuff that we were talking about. And in general, Horatio is kind of like the rest of the industry. And that's what I sense at CanMed. That's what I sense whenever we gather at conferences, is that the rest of the industry and really the rest of the world is so hungry for knowledge, right? And so hungry for knowledge in this field that has never been kind of like grandstanded has been a great vehicle for science because of it's been demonized and against the law and all the fucking bullshit about prohibition. But man, where are we now? I mean, even if we think in the 11 years that Hash Church has been running, Marcus, think about where things were 11 years ago and the progress that we've made to this point today, where things are going to be 11 years from now. And it's probably going to be on the collective of some of the people who watch Hash Church. And people have now, yeah, you're right, Marcus. People come up to me at airports, come up to me at fish shows, and they're like, "Hey, Dr. Mark, man." It's just great community of people. And
I,
Bingo and QWERTY and all you guys in chat, we love you guys. I couldn't pick Bingo Lombardi out of a lineup. I have no idea what he looks like. I have no idea if he's red hair. I have no idea if he has a beard. You know what? That doesn't matter at all because I know he's going to be in chat on Sunday at Hash Church. And yeah, it's so cool to be connected to this group and this community, which really, we can't take for granted, Marcus. This doesn't happen overnight. This only happens after you've been building this thing 11 years. So
Yeah,
thank
no, I
you.
know. Trust me. Well, when I first took our first break, I was kind of like, there's a huge community. There's tons of people doing all of this stuff. Like the hole will be filled. And I was kind of surprised that it wasn't. And then, did it for a little while longer, took another little break, still not filled, took another little break. And when I finally came back recently, I saw clearly that we have a cool little niche thing here that won't be. I mean, here's the thing. If you are not afraid to be different and you are your authentic self, there's nothing more valuable and more real than that authenticity. And that's what Hash Church is. Everyone is authentically themselves. It's a truth. The vibe is good. And we're just moving this forward. And you're right. I mean, my goodness, with a hair's, I think rosin was a big part of Hash Church's explosion. The fact that Soil Grown Phil came on here and showed how to make the rosin for the first time. It had been on Instagram, but it wasn't him talking. It was the first time online that words were being spoken out of someone's mouth on how to do this process. And it spread like wildfire. I mean, to the point where I know this much, 11 years ago, nobody was smoking rosin. I mean, really, it was just not, maybe the odd person figured out a way to do it like Compassion did with the double boiler and the milking of the heads around the stainless steel and collecting that oil. But you think of how many people are smoking rosin now. I would say a lot of people that are watching right now have rosin in their stash. And that's like a magic key that you get when you go to Walmart and buy a hair straightener. Like, how insane is that?
You know, what we were
Fucking mind.
talking about, Caleb and I yesterday were talking about, which was considered one of the lowest quality hashes, which was boiled hash. Caleb,
Boiled.
boiled? Talk about it, Caleb.
Yeah. So when we think of traditional hash in the current modern smoking lens, right? We think of dry sift, we think of hand rubbed, and you know, before smoking was more widespread, don't know exactly dates, but there's a period where eating the hash, right, is more prevalent than smoking the hash. And during that period, there's something called churum, which is I only heard of recently, reading a book by Dr. Shumak, Treasury of Hashish, and it references boiled hash. And so everyone's heard that story of supposedly the best hand rubbed hashish being collected from the bodies of naked virgins running through the fields, right? And so the first reference to that in English, like to the Western world, is from this book from 1848, which was written based off of a Indian materia medica. And like in this book, that reference is the reference, like the best quality hash is the hand rubbed hash. And they also mentioned that the lowest quality hash is boiled hash. And I can definitely see, like, as smoking took off, boiled hash just probably doesn't make the cut for smoking, especially, it's got to be used probably pretty soon after and eaten pretty soon after. But, eaten hash, boiled hash, something to think about.
That
What's
that's that
decarboxylates,
was
right?
sumac, wasn't it? That was
Mhm.
Yeah, okay. That was tasty. Sorry, Etienne, go ahead.
No, it's just yeah, wouldn't it be I mean, when you boil it, it would be decarboxylating. So if you're eating it, it's active. You know what I'm saying? So that's, yeah, it was the
Exactly.
lowest quality. You wouldn't want to smoke it. However, you see its nutritional and its medicinal values have been probably why it was used, because I know it was used also to, as we were talking about getting rid of parasites earlier, it's also used to purge and get rid of some worms and things like that.
Yeah.
Yep. Even
Yeah.
nowadays.
Plus the metabolite is so strong. You don't need the highest quality hash if you're eating it, especially if you have a lot. You can eat as much as you want. The quality to me is like, what is that? Is like maybe as a smoke or a vapor quality but if you just have you're looking for to consume THCA in abundance, eat a bunch of hash.
Or make a
Or
tincture.
or make a tincture. You know, the tincture, I love the tincture because the tincture is what allowed us to get our laws changed in Canada. Because when cannabis first became legal in the medical world here, they had it defined as marijuana. That was like marijuana. But they didn't allow extracts. There was a 14-year, potential jail sentence if you did processing. And so Kirk Toussaint from The Great Gardener, he went in front of the judge and he just said, "Look, the way it's set up right now is my grandma can grow cannabis at her house, But the minute she takes that cannabis and takes the buds and puts them in like a little tea bag and soaks them in hot water, now she has broken a federal law and could potentially serve 14 years in prison. And so the judge, who was really smart, he was like, "Well, I can't change the law." But he's like, "What I can do is I can change the definition of marijuana for British Columbia because it was a provincial case, not a federal case." And so he changed the law, the definition, sorry, of marijuana to be all things marijuana. So if you had a license to have like 4,000 grams of marijuana, you could have 4,000 grams of seed, 4,000 grams of oil, 4,000 grams of hash, basically 4,000 grams of any component of that plant, as that now became the definition. And it was a pretty big deal. That was Owen who was busted at with Vicks with Ted Smith from the Victoria uh, fame of the guy's been doing God's work for a long time over there. He's a really amazing guy. We should have Ted Smith on one day because he is pretty awesome. But yeah, him and Owen Smith, Ted had a bakery or a whatever a kitchen for doing medicinal edibles. And Owen ran that kitchen, and they were the ones that got busted for Kirk to get in front of that judge to say, "Look, come on, it doesn't make any sense." And the judge was just like, "You're right. That is absolutely ridiculous. It's going to clog up our courts, and it's problematic." So he just sealed it off by changing the definition of marijuana. I don't think I've said the word marijuana that many times in the last like 10 years of my life, but I just definitely said it like about 18 just now. And I didn't like the taste that it left in my mouth each time I said it. I don't know why. Maybe it's because I have knowledge of how they use that word against us. That's probably it.
And how hard we
We have to
fought.
reclaim it.
Right now,
Marijuana.
right? How we
Exactly.
reclaimed it, right? That
Mota.
was the main thing we're pushing in the 90s. We're like, no, we got to stop the marijuana and call it cannabis. It's going to be L. And they're like, ha, 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 marijuana, fuck you. And now, it's called cannabis use disorder, not marijuana use disorder. You know what I'm saying? It's now the cannabis control office, not the marijuana control office. So yeah, every time I hear that, I do feel a little bit of a victory because that started from a significant choice by a lot of grassroots activists to force that change by in the media, right? Every time you spoke in the media, it was to correct the media, right? And they did. They corrected it to the point where they then went at the legislator, the whoever, and then they started using cannabis. So, we're part of the reason why it's back in the vernacular because it's scientifically correct, which we always felt it should. But I agree. We're also reclaiming the racism that is inherent around cannabis and that cannabis is made. Because remember, we're in the hundredth year of dealing with marijuana prohibition, and it started due to Egypt and South Africa. So, which is odd because of the long history that, of course, we have, or cannabis and hashish has had in Egypt. However, it's still happening at the world level. So, even that in the treaties, we're getting cannabis there. It's huge, and nomenclature matters, correct, Dr. Sheldon? Especially in having a communication that's consistent across the board. By doing that, we've taken away that marijuana myth and reinstituted that cannabis professionalism that it's always deserved. And science has brought our anecdotals, right, into present day. And I can't thank science enough, but, thank you, scientists.
You're welcome. Yes, you're absolutely right. Nomenclature does matter, and it's one of the reasons why I'm a stickler online when I see people using wrong terms of art and wrong terms of, our vernacular to basically describe cannabis. People have often, again, misconstrued ideas that then, if you're an influencer or somebody who has a lot of followers and you say something that's wrong or incorrect, and now those followers repeat that and it gets repeated and repeated. It's one of the reasons why, yes, we do need standardization of nomenclature. Absolutely, ATN. I'm totally on board with what you're saying.
Well, maybe one last dab before we head off onto our prospective days. I think that's in order.
Oh
I did.
no, do we have to? Oh
Oh, is
no.
that what we're doing? We're hitting Shirley's or pivots?
Hey, we're hitting puffs. Whatever's Puffco. The sponsor gives me love. I can't get a hold of them, but they still
Dude,
gave
I
me.
I never liked the proxy for a very long time. I had this sitting for a very, very long time. And when they sent, because I have the glass pipe and all this other, I didn't like it. But this terracotta pipe with this in it is fucking so cool, dude. Like it's just so cool. I'm a fan.
I'm a fan. Yep, easy to clean, easy to use. That's just what people are looking for, right? You don't want complicated. You don't want a whole bunch of weird tools. Don't get me wrong. If you see to my right, all the tools that I have, I'm obnoxious, but because I've collected the different generations of tools, right, over the years, all these different dabbers, dab equipments,
You have it all, dude.
bottom caps, yeah, because I tested like you for other people all the time, and I'm happy to test because
Mhm.
I'm a regular everyday user. And one of the things that I think we all hate is because again, we spend quality money, right, to buy equipment. And if you're gonna spend it, it should work. And it's been hit and miss, right? From remember the OG male nails, and that it was just glowies. Then we figured out timers. Then we figured out, oh, that became female. Now there was,
Dude, are we
then
not smart? Why does it take us 20 years to figure shit out?
well, the technology, we didn't have technology
That's
access
true.
or legal markets where people could feel like Jolly Roger and them figured out, okay, this is what's needed. It needs rubber that can be wiped clean. It needs, all these different things that stoners use because a lot of it were just general use stuff that doesn't apply specifically to dabbing. It has to be clean because it gums up. You know what I'm saying? That's just the reality of using concentrates. And again, how we've gone from nails to e-nails, then to induction, and all these different apparatus. But yeah, in the past we've seen innovations in the last 5 to 10 years, specifically because of technology and the legality and markets now looking for, again, right? We created and helped pushed out resin. Well, there needed to be ways to use that resin. Prior to using BHO, people would just soak buds in it or just drop it directly on charcoal. Okay, we used to buy this charcoal with gunpowder in it and light it and let it burn till it was white. Remember
Classic.
that? Correct. That's
For the
how a lot of
incense.
us. Correct. Yeah, and so that was how, again, we've evolved and how quickly. I mean, we've literally gone from the caveman in my lifetime where we were scraping off of coals to where literally, and then hot knifing it, right? Oops, why is my tips of my knives have these funny colors, rainbow colors? Oh, and then now here we are sitting here with little electronic gadgets that can get us high, anywhere, everywhere, and concentrates in air in containers as well as refrigeration to the point where absolutely we have access to some of the best, most quality products and the intakes as humanly possible. But somebody right now is in their basement making something better. We were like, what? Somebody using hair straighteners? That's impossible. How are we going to use hair straighteners to get fucking high? And then we
Right?
came on, and then we all got together in Barcelona. We were like, holy shit, this works. And then people figured out what? They figured out big squishers, and they figured out better squishers, and they figured out better temperatures and better paper and better ways to, so remember, it used to taste kind of like almost burnt. Now you get that terpene expression, right? People are pushing that innovation, right?
Yep. I will add
Keep
to
doing it.
that. that there are also people in their basements, if you're not that person in your basement currently making some unique, better thing. There are a lot of people in basements like puffing out of Coke cans right now and puffing out of like carrot pipes and apple pipes. And we all started somewhere, maybe you made a little bong with a couple of pieces of bolts and nuts and a mason jar and some tubing. It's all just a fun little journey that we take in the how to get stoned in different ways with cannabis. What a long, strange trip it's been. I want to thank everyone for coming out today. I want to thank our sponsors, the Press Club, for hooking up that big ass spoon or big fucking spoon, whatever I called that. And to HR Inc., I'll send you that email. We'll get you hooked up with them direct so you can pass them your address so they can get that to you. Shout out to Puffco for supplying our puffables and our devices and kind of normalizing dabs and hash smoking worldwide. I really think that is, a lot of people chime in on the negative aspects of these electronic devices, but they are as important as these beverages we spoke about today from the perspective of normalizing dabs with everyday people and being able to see like this isn't like a bong and it's not even kind of a vaporizer. Like it doesn't look like that big hidden vape juice thing. So when you can create new looking devices that can break through all of the propaganda, because this device wasn't a part of that propaganda. This almost looks like an oversized lipstick or something. It's a pretty cool thing. So shout out to Puffco for always supporting us here at Hash Church. Thank you to Bingo Lombardi and all the good folks and moderators that are in the room holding it down. Thank you to all the people who spent their Sunday morning and afternoon watching with us today. We love and appreciate you, of course. And next week, fingers crossed, we are going to do this aromatic volatile compound show. We'll see how it goes. We'll see you next week, everybody. May the full mouth bless your bowl sooner than later. Let's make it sooner. Peace out,
Yep.
everybody.